Countries are meeting at a U.S. air base in Ramstein, Germany. The German government is under pressure to agree to allow some of the heavy tanks that it produces to be sent to Ukraine to defend against Russian attacks. Germany would like the U.S. to send some of its own tanks to Ukraine. 3 trucks with humanitarian aid have reached a town in eastern Ukraine. Lisa Schlein reports from Geneva. The trucks are near Soledar, a town recently captured by Russia.
A UN spokesman, Jens Leerke, says the supplies of food, water, hygiene kits, and medicines provided by several UN agencies are on the ground.
It is intended for 800 people who remain in this area, which has been contested, which has seen its fair share of hostilities, and there's widespread destruction. So people are in dire need of aid there.
The UN aid convoy left from Dnipro, the site of a recent Russian missile attack that killed dozens of people, including children. Leerke says the needs close to the front lines in Ukraine are acute, and more aid convoys are expected close to the front lines in the coming days if security permits. For NPR News, I'm Lisa Schlein in Geneva.
The state of Florida will not allow high school students to take a new advanced placement course in African American studies. A Florida state office has declared the African American AP course lacks educational value and violates state law. Florida state lawmaker Rosalind Osgood is outraged.
I don't know what the basis of this thought is. It's downright painful to people of color.
The state of Florida will apparently allow high school students to continue to take advanced placement courses in European history. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 84 points at 33,128. You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A new report on child mental health services in Massachusetts shows the challenges that existed before the pandemic have gotten worse. Karen Brown has the report from the New England News Collaborative.
The Massachusetts Association of Health Plans highlighted several long-standing problems: a fragmented system that leads to poor coordination of care, a shrinking workforce, and not enough access to community-based urgent care when a child is in crisis. Report co-author Nancy Lane.
If you can't find a place to take your child to get care, you take them to the emergency room. And if you go to the emergency room, it's much more likely that you will end up being hospitalized.
She says the state's new expansion of behavioral health care helps address these problems by creating community mental health centers, mobile crisis teams, and a helpline. But experts say there should be a robust public information campaign to let families and primary care doctors know how to find and get those services. For the New England News Collaborative, I'm Karen Brown.
The city of Boston is this close to putting a bid to bring the NBA All-Star Game to the TD Garden. During the broadcast of the Celtics win over the Warriors last night, TNT's Chris Hayes reported that the Celtics and the city are preparing a bid to bring the All-Star Game here in 2026. It's been 59 years since the All-Star Game came to Boston, and Hayes says that he's been told that Boston Mayor Michelle Wu and Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey are in favor of doing everything to bring the NBA All-Star Game to Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Sony Pictures Classics, presenting The Son, a film by Florian Zeller starring Hugh Jackman and Laura Dern about a father whose life is upended as he takes care of his son, now playing everywhere.
I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and every Friday. And we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hi.
Hey there. Do you want to thank people for coming?
I do. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
For coming.
Now, Marjorie, before we start, I have bad news and good news.
What's that?
The bad news is, I know this will shock you, I'm in a foul mood. I know that's really unusual, but you know what the good news is?
We got the happiness guy.
The happiness doctor is
coming.
there. I hope he doesn't
right.
hate being called the happiness doctor. The guy who's in charge of the longest study ever of happiness since 1938.
Since 1938.
Is going to join. Well, he hasn't done it since 1938.
No, but we have a long we have generations and generations and generations to help cure you, Jim.
Well, that's the goal. Can he fix me? We shall find out in about 25 minutes. So it's January 20th, and here we are, another mostly rainy day in downtown with a couple of beautiful snowflakes thrown in. Is this really what winter in Boston has become? Every day just a couple of degrees above freezing, rainy, sort of like Seattle in late March. Billy Baker wrote this piece in yesterday's Globe. He writes a quote, "Our very identity is at stake. What kind of," I don't like this expression, but what kind of masshole will I be if I don't get to complain about the people who complain about the weather? Obviously, this goes beyond the fluff because it's a real sign of the changed climate we're living in, not 10 or 20 years in the future, but today. New England in particular, and the ocean waters around it have become two of the fastest warming places on the planet. So we want to know at 877-301-8970, are you missing the magic of winter in this climate change landscape? Or are you enjoying not having to shovel or bundle up as much, perhaps as a slight silver lining to our ever dire climate mess? 877-301-8970. I mean, obviously, we learned, 2015 with Charlie Baker just in office in February, mid-February.
Yeah,
the deluge came.
Right.
Having said that, so far, it's yet another winter with virtually no snow, virtually no winter, you know?
Well, the thing is that we're warming here. The Northeast is warming, and the oceans around us are two of the fastest warming places
Someone
in the
I really
world.
respect said that about 30 seconds ago.
Yeah,
I love
Jim
that
Brady-
guy. That was me. That's
Jim Brady
correct.
said
You're
that.
correct. Thank you.
But that doesn't mean that we're not going to go back to snow. What do we call it?
Snowmageddon.
Snowmageddon,
Yeah.
or Snowcopolis, or whatever we called it.
Snowpocalypse.
Apocalypse, whatever we called
it is,
it. In 2015, when we had those mountains of snow, and remember they had that massive parking lot full.
In July, in South Boston,
It was
in
still
July.
melting in July. It's the unpredictability. Even though we're overall warming, we can swing from warm to freezing to freezing to warm. I mean, we've had that this year, right? Where one day it was like 50 degrees, the next day it was 20 degrees, and it was back up to 50
Yeah, but
degrees.
there's no snow. I mean, I
There's
know
no
there are
snow.
extremes, but there's no snow.
But the thing, which is upsetting, because none of us like to shovel, but lots of us like when you wake up in the morning and there's 4 inches or 6 inches of snow on the ground, and it's really quiet, it's before it's gotten dirty, and the kids get a day off from school, and it's really a beautiful thing. Not to mention the sledding that kids like to do around here. I mean, a lot of kids probably get sleds for Christmas, right? They haven't come in much use yet. Or, you read about these ice skating rinks all over the place. I mean, people are buying these backdoor ice skating rinks for their kids to play, to skate on, and they can't get cold enough. They're having to postpone all these. New Hampshire's 12th annual Black Ice Pond Hockey Tournament has been done outside for 12 years. Well, they had to postpone it and get it inside a place to have it because the ice is all melting. So it's weird. But the thing that I think is so upsetting to me, like I said, is the unpredictability. I mean, last summer it was a drought, right, which was terrible for plants and terrible for trees. It was great for going to the beach. Is this summer going to be a drought, or is this summer going to be like the summer before, rain, 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 in just these massive downfalls? It's you can't count on things you could usually count on.
Okay, so that's probably right. Marjorie is talking about one thing. I'm apparently talking about another. Marjorie's talking about climate change. We don't have any snow. Someone just texted and said bad programming scheduling. Look out the window. I'm looking out the window. There's not any snow staying on the ground. There are a few flakes in the sky.
Pathetic flakes, by the way.
So we want to know how you're reacting to the fact, at least so far, Marjorie's right about the extremes, how you're reacting to a virtually snowless winter. I should say, Marjorie knows this. One of the things I enjoy most, it's aberrational for me, usually in January, what I do with all my neighbors in Inman Square, I go do snow angels in Inman Square because I really, as you know, I love doing that with people I live near in my neighborhood. I'm not a big snow guy. I love the beauty of it. I love a little of it. If there was not a lot, it wouldn't bother me. What bothers me is what it signifies, as you say, which is that climate change is front and center here in Massachusetts. So we want to know, 877-301-8970, how are you reacting so far this winter to the paucity of snow? Are you stepping back and thinking about sort of the more dire things that are connected to that? Or are you perfectly fine that we're not having to slog through this thing and slipping and sliding and all those sort of things? 877-301-8970 is our texting and call line.
So listen to this reporting from the Daniel Kuhl from the Globe. He says that Vermont's Mad River Glen ski resort, which is a great, very difficult ski resort. They have that bumper sticker that says Mad River Glen Mad River Glen, ski it if you can. Anyway,
if you can is the operative phrase,
yes,
I think.
But it's really working now because you can't, because there's not enough snow. They talked about only 20 of the 53 trails are open, and the problem for there is it's not cold enough for them to make snow. So one of the guys from up there at Mad River Glen said, well, there's going to be some rocks here and there you have to avoid. There's going to be some dirt spots, but we hope you can get down the mountain in some places safely. We had this really depressing story yesterday about the Alpine villages.
In Switzerland.
That's their whole economy, right? These beautiful snowbound places where people come in the wintertime to ski and just to sit by the fire and look at the beautiful snow. They're like out of business because there's no snow in the Alpine. What are you laughing at?
Everybody is texting saying, I'm in so-and-so, we have 6 inches. I'm in so-and-so, it's a foot. We're in downtown Boston. We're at the library, and at the library, there's nothing. There are a couple of snowflakes falling down. And for the most part, I'm so sorry. I just kicked one of my coworkers who was trying to fix something here. My apology. That's how upset I am about this thing. For the most part, we are having a fairly snowless winter. 877-301-8970. Let's go to Al on the road. Al, you're first on Boston Public Radio. Don't start by telling us there's 2 feet of snow wherever you are. Okay, Al?
I'm on 93 South. There's flakes in the air, but nothing on the ground.
Exactly.
Thank you, Al.
Take it away, Al.
I grew up playing pond hockey and bog hockey.
Yeah.
And we used to, that was the whole neighborhood winter. We'd all get together. One kid would be in charge of shoveling off the pond so we could play hockey and all that stuff. My kids are 10 and 12, and they've never skated outside.
That is pretty intense.
That
is really
That's
intense.
a great one. That's a great one, Al. My parents, I always talk about going down the Cape. My parents, a million years ago, bought a place down on a lake on Cape Cod, and you would see all the time the ice fishermen out there. They dig their holes, and they'd come out, they'd make their little tents. I lived for a while up in Burlington, Vermont. Up in Burlington, Vermont, you'd see these big, huge trucks going across Lake Champlain, and Burlington is one of the places that's warming faster. It's up 7 degrees, which in Burlington, they got a long way to go for it to be really freezing. But people are falling through the ice in these places. And there is ice boats, those ice sailboats that would fly across the ice. Those haven't been on the lake in a long time because it just hasn't been cold enough. These whole winter sports that we're famous for, right?
Well, not only famous for, Marjorie doesn't like telling this story, but I will because I happen to have caught a fish. She did not. Several years ago, we went ice fishing in New Hampshire.
That's right.
What were they called? The Fish Nerds?
Fish Nerds.
They
were
had a
great
podcast. I don't know if they're around anymore. And we went ice fishing. We had a bob house. Is that what it's called?
Bob house,
we drank
exactly.
beers out on the ice.
Yeah.
And who caught a fish and who did not?
You did catch a fish, Jim.
I did catch a fish.
And you know what? We ate it about 5 minutes after we caught it. It was really
You
delicious.
cooked it on a Bunsen
fish.
burner or something.
Yeah.
It was really exciting.
They had to carry Jim out to the ice on a toboggan.
They didn't carry me out. They towed me out on a toboggan because I couldn't stand on the ice. I was worried I'd fall. That happens to be true.
Here's John from Newport, Rhode Island. We get 2 weeks of winter these days, one big cold snap with a little bit of snow, and then it will be spring. So far, winter hasn't started.
Do you remember the ice sculptures this New Year's Eve? I think it was at the aquarium. They had to wrap them in all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and when they opened them up, the detail was all gone because they melted so much. Yeah, they put an ice sculpture up in front of this restaurant, the Golden Temple in Brookline, near where I live, and it was dripping. It was depressing to look at it.
Let's go to Aislinn in Norwood. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome, Aislinn. Thanks for calling.
Hi there. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Our pleasure.
So I am first time, long time, and
Thank you.
I have been complaining about the lack of winter forever, so this was my moment to call.
Great.
I'm a lifelong figure skater, and I own a skate shop, and so this, this hits me personally. The first time I ever skated was outdoors. I'm originally from Montana, and I'm lucky that the Boston area has lots of competitive indoor figure skating, so that keeps my business afloat. But there's a lot of recreational skaters and pond skaters, and it doesn't happen anymore. At least it's wildly dangerous if you try. So, I get frustrated when people talk about how it's great there's no snow and the weather's great, and I kind of want to scream no, winter is wonderful.
Hey, Aislinn, have you been in business long enough that you could sort of track the progressive diminution in snowfall and cold temperatures? I mean, can you feel it through the years?
I've only owned the business for about 6 years, so enough to see it, but I haven't been around long enough to see long-term changes, but just being alive and loving winter for 30-some years, it's definitely noticeable. We just don't get winter the way we used to.
Hey, Aislinn, we're glad you made your first call. Do another one soon, and good luck with the business and with your skating. We appreciate your call.
You know, it is, of course, possible that 2 weeks from now we'll get a big blizzard and we'll have 2 or 3
That's your point about extremes. But is it overall, even with extremes, it's disappearing?
Well, as I just said, the Northeast is warming, as you just said, and I repeated.
I think
one
you
of the
should say it
world's
again.
fastest. The oceans are warming.
Should you read the Greenland story from a couple of days ago, which has nothing to do with snow, whatever, about the melting rate that is happening there and the 20-foot rise? Hearkening back to one of your favorite quotes from Trump recently, what did he say? Over like 200 years, it rises a quarter of an inch.
He said something crazy like the ocean.
Shocking. He'd say that.
He was a climate change denier. A lot of Republicans are climate change deniers.
So there's something called ice castles in New Hampshire that had a delay opening due to, quote, an unprecedented warm start to winter. The attraction is now moved back to January 27th.
Well, these ski resorts, I mean, a lot of New Hampshire ski resorts in Vermont and Maine, I mean, that's going to be a tragedy for them if they can't, because you obviously can't even make snow if the temperature isn't cold enough. Pamela in Concord, thank you for calling.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, we hear you perfectly.
Hi. Oh, good. Thank you so much for taking my call. I just love your show so much. And
thank you.
I was just complaining to my husband this morning about not being able to complain about winter, and then I heard your show. I'm a native Bostonian.
We're here for you, Pamela.
No, thank you. I'm a native Bostonian. I live in Concord now. I grew up pond skating. I have such great memories growing up. My high school boyfriend going pond skating, and sometimes would take a sheet and go ice sailing across the pond. It was just such great memories. But you know, that's really what it is now. It's just memories. Last February, my husband and I actually fell to the ice on the pond near our house. It was really scary. I mean, if my kids had ever done what we did, I'd scream at them. But I thought it was safe because I grew up pond skating. It was really cold that day. But I realized that the temperature had been so variegated that the ice just wasn't really stable.
Pamela, how'd you get out of the ice?
Oh, my husband is he's like an Eagle Scout type. We didn't have on skates. We were, I had on the right boots too, because the boots were like a buoy. We were just walking across a pond near our house. It's good I do yoga because my left leg was at a complete right angle to the rest of me. But the first thing he said was, I need to get a picture of this. I said, no picture. Help me get out of this. Then he fell through. And then I said, we're in trouble. He said, no, we're not. And he said, use your upper body. We're in pretty good shape for old people. Use your upper body and pull up, and then we basically crawled. We got out of the hole we were in, and then we crawled on hands and knees we were only maybe about, I'm not good at yards, but maybe about, I don't know, 100, 200 feet from the shore.
Well, Pamela, I'm glad I didn't see you on the 11 o'clock news with your husband.
By the way, if I had been with Pamela and her husband would have said, nice to know you, Jim. That would have been the end of me. Hey,
Thank
Pamela,
you very much.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you very much.
It.
This is from Jody, who says, my son takes ski lessons at Blue Hills every winter on Sundays. This year it's now been postponed twice because of warm weather and no snow. The kids are so disappointed. But a lot of people are mailing and say, we have 5 good weeks. This is Laura from West Roxbury. We have still 5 good weeks for potential snowstorms, at least. And even the pathetic snow over the weekend, my little kids managed to be outside and made a miniature snowman. It was, she says, pretty pathetic looking.
Well, wasn't it almost 60 last week one day?
Yeah, it was one of these.
I mean, there are 2 levels of concern. One, the things that people care a lot about, snow and winter-related kinds of things, which I have to admit, as I say, I'm not as into as most people are, even though I love a little bit of snow. And secondly, what it signifies. Don't you, when you're in January and it's 60 degrees,
60
other than
degrees.
reveling in the 60 degrees, isn't the first thing you think about the cause? I mean, it's hard to resist, is it not?
It was 60 degrees here on December 30th.
It was.
60 degrees.
No, it was almost 60 degrees last week, too. It was either 58 or 59 or some such thing. Let's go to Newton, where Phyllis is on the phone. Phyllis, welcome to Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hey, hi there.
Hi.
I live in Newton Center.
Yeah.
My husband and I were walking from Newton Center to the Highlands, and Crystal Lake was frozen. He took me in his arms. We danced around the lake, and it was so lovely, and the image is still with me. I miss that.
Oh, you mean from days gone by? It wasn't like last week kind of thing.
That's very romantic, Phyllis.
Phyllis.
Very romantic.
Yeah.
Dancing
That
around
is
the Crystal
beautiful.
Lake with your husband. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
not that long ago, but too long ago. Yes.
Well, that's sort of sad.
It is kind
It's
of
very
sad.
sad. Phyllis, thank you.
Yeah. Now I think you got to really be careful going out in the ice. I mean, you got to really make
You
sure.
go out on the ice in that pond. What's the name of that lake on where your house is?
Wequawket.
Wequawket.
Yeah.
Is that frozen over, or what's the deal?
Now, are you kidding me?
No.
No. As I said, it used to be ice fishing, ice boating, all sorts of fun things, and that is all over now because the ice has not gotten thick enough to sustain it. Anyway, we're talking about the fact that we're looking out the window, and it's got a few pathetic snowflakes in the air. They're not sticking to the ground at all. It's just
It's pretty. If you look at
slushy
the sky, it's actually
mess.
quite pretty. The problem is the ground level is not very appealing.
The ground level is not very appealing, no, because we are warming faster than almost any place in the United States, and this is part of the problem. We have no snow. Winterless winters,
Exactly.
in New England. 877-301-8970 is the number to call or text. You're listening to Boston Public Radio.
Next time on The World, sanctions on Russia. Ever since Vladimir Putin began his, quote, special military operation in Ukraine, the West has been tightening economic sanctions on banking, on trade, on oil and gas. The goal is to isolate the Kremlin and limit Putin's war-making ability in Ukraine. But how are all those sanctions actually working? And are they enough to discourage Putin? We get a reality check on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Eversource, committed to helping your business reach its sustainability goals. You can learn more about custom recommendations to help reduce your carbon footprint and lessen your environmental impact at eversource.com. And Positive Coaching Alliance, a national nonprofit offering more than 1,000 online resources for youth and high school sports coaches, parents, students, and administrators. Learn more at pcadevzone.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the dud of a winter we're having. If you like things like cold and you like things like snow, we're not getting much of either. Are you a parent who wishes you could make snow angels with your kids without, I don't know, getting soaked in sleet? Or maybe you're enjoying the couple extra degrees. And what does it mean for all the businesses like Aislinn a few minutes ago and people who depend on snow, ski slopes, plow drivers, now that New England is getting decidedly warmer due to climate change? I just want to say, the thing you've mentioned and I mentioned about 9 times so far, that Gulf of Maine thing is the second fastest warming body of water, not in the United States, as you said, in the world. The second fastest
Well, look at the
warming body
lobsters.
of water.
They used to be so plentiful around Cape Cod and Massachusetts, and they moved to Maine. Now they're going to be moving to Canada, basically, and that's going to be not very good for Maine. It wasn't very good for us either. So we have we're getting weather reports, Jim, from southern New Hampshire and East Brookfield reporting.
What, saying it's snowing?
Saying it's been snowing here, and they're very happy about it. We're going to ignore those people, exactly.
On
the other hand,
fit with our theme, if you know what I mean. Really. Ignore the reality and just plow ahead. That's the way we work here.
Listen to this. My closet full of high-quality extreme weather jackets, gloves, and hats sits unused, still, again. My beautiful, heavy-duty Sorel boots are quietly collecting dust on a shelf. I am verklempt.
What's wrong with that person? What's the name of that person?
They didn't give their name.
I wouldn't either.
They're very depressed.
What else do you have there?
They're very depressed. Climate change happening? No. Nothing. Especially with these crazy weekly rain and windstorms and 50-plus degrees in December and January, plus crazy sinus pressure from allergies. Nothing going on here, says Seth from Salem.
By the way, the line, I know everybody knows this, all of the climate deniers talk about everything is cyclical. This Greenland story I was talking about that I read a couple of days ago, do you know how long it's been since the temperature was this warm in Greenland?
I don't know, Jim.
1,000 years.
Yeah.
Is that cyclical?
Well,
I don't think so.
Listen, it's just, what it basically is fossil fuel propaganda, and people buy. We talked the other day about how Exxon knew this was going to happen back in the 1970s.
And knew with precision how bad it was going to be.
They were predicting the exact temperatures.
No snow angels there,
They were
Marjorie.
pretty close. They knew it was going to happen. The fossil fuel industry is trying to hold on to their money, and they're trying to build these more gas power. We just haven't acted. And like everything else around here, we haven't acted because we have people living in a web of baloney and lies about things.
Means words there.
Yeah, well, I wanted to...
Web of baloney.
I wanted to say something worse, but...
Let's go to Corey.
What's a good substitute, Jim? Well, you can't swear on the radio.
Let's go to Corey. You can. I mean, there may be consequences. Corey and JP, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for calling. What's up?
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie. I just have to tell you I love you. This is my 4th time on the air.
Oh, thank you.
You're very kind.
Thank you.
Thanks.
But okay.
Thanks.
So, I work at Westport Rivers Vineyard and Winery.
Oh, gosh.
I know that. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And I'm actually doing a tasting tonight at Ball Square Fine Wines in Somerville.
Somerville.
Just saying that.
Okay.
Nice ad placement there,
that
Corey.
very
That was
nicely.
excellent.
So, in 2015, we had a cold snap. It was on Valentine's Day. There was it warmed up to around 70 degrees, and then on Valentine's Day, a blizzard hit, and it got down to negative 33 in Westport. And
Westport, Massachusetts?
Yes.
I don't remember that.
And the following year, it almost a year to the day, a similar thing happened, and we lost. We had 90,000 vines. We lost 30,000 vines.
Oh my gosh.
So just to drive home the point about Marjorie's emphasis on it's not just the warming, but it's the extremes.
Yeah.
Hey, Corey.
People don't think of. Oh, yep.
I don't know if you're aware. Do you know that you have a wine tasting in Ball Square in Somerville tonight? Has anybody told you that?
Yes.
What time is that? What time?
It's at 5 to 7.
Where is it again? I can't remember.
It's Ball Square Fine Wine.
Ball Square, there you go, Jim.
Hey, Corey, great call. Call a 5th time. We look forward to it. Now, Joe asks I think it's a scientific question. I know you're not a scientist, so don't try to weasel out of this. Here's a legitimate question. Marjorie, do you think some of the warming and lack of snow is related to the hot air emanating from Jim? Do you think... That's a text we just got.
Oh, I like that.
What do you think about that?
Well, I say that he listens to the show, Jim. That's what
Apparently
I would say.
he
listens
does.
to the show. Heather from Medford says we had a bunch of snow piled up one year, but it wasn't until after the Super Bowl. I don't remember, but she wants to know when the Super Bowl is. Maybe we have to wait till the Super Bowl to find out. To get a big storm. And a lot of people are reminding us of 2015. Remember the great pictures. This is
the
right
long
after
march by the subway?
When the red line, of course, surprise, surprise, wouldn't run, and everybody had to get out and walk, and the snow was
Great
up to their
photos.
thighs. It
I
looked
do.
like something from the middle of Russia in the 1940s.
Baker was governor like a month at that point, wasn't he? Like maybe a month and a week when that happened?
Listen to this. Lake Winnipesaukee still has not frozen over. Ice out is a very big deal. Not looking like it will happen this year. That's from Joe in New Hampshire. That's another place where they had ice fishing, ice boating, all that kind of thing. Okay, 877-301-8970 is the number. Oh, Gary's calling from Wisconsin.
Hey, Gary, what's up in Wisconsin? Other than the fact that Ron Johnson is the worst senator in America, which is not what we're talking about today. Go ahead, Gary.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that.
Thank you.
I'm out here to talk about juxtaposition. I'm snow blowing my 300-foot driveway. We got 8 inches yesterday. I'm not bragging. I got 2 inches overnight.
Wow.
And I'm listening to your show on my earbuds, and it's just kind of funny. But I'm calling to say I do remember growing up in Randolph.
Yeah.
And being extremely bummed out when we had brown Christmases and no snow
absolutely.
days. And,
well, I know this will shock you, Gary. I'm not a skier, but when you see those ski slopes, like the photographs in the Boston Globe, where like 2/3 of the slope is brown, is dirt or upended grass, and there's this little sliver of snow, it's really horrible in a whole bunch of ways,
I agree,
Gary, does Wisconsin typically get a lot of snow? Is this unusual? I don't know.
We've had it pretty good. The last few years,
Yeah.
but cold temperatures. Obviously, it's going to be 11 degrees next week. But
Yeah, because we got a text from someone that said that it had been snowing a lot in Flagstaff, Arizona. You wouldn't think of Flagstaff. Gary, thank you very much.
Gary, it's great to hear
for the
from
call.
you.
You would have thought. I don't think it snows that much in Arizona.
I really
usually,
don't know. I
does
would
it?
think not. No, it's sort of like a southern kind of thing, a southwest.
Yeah, Paul says winter is wonderful. He's texting from Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Hey, let's take Paul from Wellesley. Paul, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
We're good, I think. Hi.
Hi. So I'm glad to hear you having this discussion. There's a couple of things I wanted to mention.
Please.
One is what fun it used to be to skate on the pond. We have in Wellesley, there's a reservoir area. And I remember very well taking my kids skiing there. And I remembered one of the cool things was chasing fish under the ice. When the ice was clear with no snow on top.
That's pretty great.
And they swim fast, but if you're on ice skates, you can sometimes keep up with them. And it was just a very memorable experience. But the other thing I wanted to mention is not many people, I think, pay attention or know about this or are aware of it, but the National Weather Service has a 24/7 radio broadcast of forecasts I'm a sailor, so I care about the weather, and they forecast the marine forecast. They broadcast the marine forecast, but they also give a little climate almanac summary, which gives they do, and it reports the record days, high and low temperatures for every day, and that's very interesting because if you listen close, the higher. The record highs are coming closer and closer to nowadays. The record lows are still back in late 1800s and early 1900s.
Well, it's interesting, but pretty depressing, would you not say?
Well, I'm mentioning it. It's just the evidence about the change in our climate has been there. It's been accessible and available for years and years. So if you listen to this has been going on since I moved permanently to the area in 1970, and
it's accelerating. As we've talked to Bill McKibben about, it's accelerating and it's painful.
Hey, Paul, we're
thanks
out
for
of
the call.
time because we've got to move on. But thank you very much for the call.
We don't have to move on quite yet because a lot of people are making a request, and I want to try to satisfy that request. The guy from Wisconsin, he used to live in Randolph, was mentioning he doesn't want us to feel bad, but he's got 8 inches of snow, which caused a lot of texters to reference the legendary meteorologist Pete Bouchard, who talked about 8 inches, and he says 9 inches of snow. Here's the legendary moment from the legendary meteorologist, Pete Bouchard.
In Princeton, we picked up 9 inches of snow. Bill Ricca had 7, the biggest amount that I could find, almost as big as me.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
About 9 inches.
About 9 inches. Thank you, Pete Bouchard.
Okay.
TMI, as they say, Pete.
Yeah. The guy just texted from New Brunswick, Canada. Only 2 inches of snow up there in New Brunswick, Canada. Anyway, we're moving on. We're doing this especially for Jim, actually. We have the man behind the world's longest ever happiness study. We're hoping we can give Jim some tips. That's Harvard's Dr. Robert Waldinger. He's next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming.
Making you part of our newsroom. This is one of those things where you were the one who told us to look.
Like how you did with the color of public money?
Boston has a nearly 40-year-old rule that requires builders to include minorities on any major construction project. But the rule has never been enforced.
It was a phone call from Priscilla Flint, who called me up and said,
we still ride up and down these streets and we see a lot of people that don't look like us on these jobs.
GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Safety Insurance, committed to environmental sustainability and supporting many local charities. You can ask an independent agent about auto, home, and business coverage from Safety Insurance. Safety Insurance. They'll help you manage life's storms. And Subaru of New England. This winter, you can take your adventures outside in the 2023 Subaru Outback with symmetrical all-wheel drive. You can find your Subaru retailer at SubaruofNewEngland.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. For 85 years, the Harvard study of adult development has been tracking what makes people thrive. It started with boys from disadvantaged and troubled families in Boston and Harvard undergrads, then grew to incorporate the spouses of the original men, and now includes more than 1,300 of their descendants. Its current director, Dr. Robert Waldinger, joins us now at the Boston Public Library to share some of the findings from the longest study on human life ever of this kind. He's also co-author of The Good Life, Lessons from the World's Longest Scientific Study of Happiness, Create a More Meaningful and Satisfying Life. Let's hope. Dr. Waldinger, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just say,
What?
I'm so thrilled to be here because I listen to your show all the
Oh,
time.
thank you.
And your show makes me happy.
That
I just
is
need to say
not
that.
even possible.
okay.
All
It
we
is
do is depress people.
No,
is that really true?
That is the existential question here. You've written a whole book.
Thank you,
You
by
and Mark Schultz, Robert Waldinger, MD, Mark Schultz, PhD. Are you happy?
Right now I am, yes.
In general, I mean, has this made you happier? Because I'm reading this book. I want to be happier when I'm through. You wrote it, so.
You know, nobody's happy all the time.
Okay.
That's one of those part of the web of baloney that we get sold
Okay.
sometimes,
Yeah.
right? That,
Yeah.
that we can be happy all the time if we just do the right stuff.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not happy all the time.
Okay.
But right now, this is a good thing.
Okay,
being-
he's happy. You're happy to be here. Well,
Yeah.
that's very good.
You're a
There's a
fine
gentleman over there
soul.
that needs some help, so we're hoping you can help him very much.
Thank you.
Tell
She'd be
us.
talking about me for those
Yeah.
people who are not watching on YouTube.
So
Go ahead.
85, I love this. We've got the grandparents, in some cases the great-grandparents, right down through the generations. So how did this all begin back 85 years ago?
Well, it began with two studies that didn't know about each other. Harvard University Health Service chose some fine, upstanding young men who they thought were going to develop well, and they wanted to study normal, healthy development. So, of course, you study all white men from Harvard, right? And we don't,
Of course.
So we've expanded beyond that. But then the other study was a study from Boston's, not just poorest neighborhoods, but the most troubled families. And the question was, what keeps some kids on good developmental paths, even when they're born with so many strikes against them?
So, go ahead. I'm sorry, Marjorie.
What does?
Well, we found two things. One is that taking care of your health really does matter, just like our grandparents told us.
Okay.
But also, and this was the surprise, that the people who had the warmest relationships with other people were not just happier, they stayed healthier and they lived longer. And that was the part we didn't believe at first until other research studies began to find the same thing.
And we use the term relationship, we learned from your book. You mean it in the broadest sense. It could be with your UPS delivery person, your spouse, a guest on your show who is kind enough to say that he listens to your show. It's all kinds of relationships, right?
Absolutely, it's all kinds. You don't need an intimate partner. You don't need to live with anyone. What we think is that everybody needs at least one relationship where they feel like the person really has their back. When our people got to their 80s, we asked them, who could you call in the middle of the night if you were sick or scared? List everybody. And most people could list quite a few people. Some people couldn't list anyone. And we think those people are in trouble.
So how do you know that relationships of all different kinds, of all different tenures, of all different intensity, how do you know that they make people happy? And by the way, I don't mean to be touchy-feely. What is the happiness thing that people hopefully want to achieve? And maybe we should really have started there. What is it?
Well, research tells us that happiness actually falls into two big buckets. One is hedonic happiness. It's like, am I having a good time right now? But the other is my life meaningful? Do I feel like there's purpose to my life? Sort of like raising children, which isn't always fun, but is one of the most meaningful things many people find.
So how do you know that relationships, how did you conclude that relationships of all kinds foster both of those kinds of outcomes?
We measure it. We do all kinds of things. We ask people if they're happy, but we ask other people if they're happy. We draw their blood. We scan their brains. We stress them out deliberately in our lab and see how quickly they recover. All different windows.
Because a lot of people obviously think they're happy and are not. And a lot of people probably think they are not, and actually, comparatively speaking, are. Is that?
Well, it is eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we decide that someone isn't happy if they say they are?
Yeah, and the answer is?
They're happy.
Happy.
It's also, loneliness is similar. Loneliness is a subjective experience of not being connected to other people, and you can be lonely in a crowd.
Well, what surprised me, too, is I think you found the most lonely people to be between 16 and 24.
Yes.
I would have thought just the opposite.
No, it turns out that this sense of disconnection is so much more common in younger people who feel very vulnerable as they look around the world and they're not sure they belong.
You talk a lot about our over-involvement with media, whether it's watching TV or listening to the radio, which of course we want everyone to do, but that's part of our problem, our over-reliance on or social media now with these kids.
As solitary pursuits is what you're saying,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Well, and the research shows that depending on how we use social media, it either makes us happier or it makes us feel worse. That if we're active in how we use it to connect with other people, that enhances our well-being. But if we passively scroll through other people's curated lives on Instagram, we start feeling worse.
Yeah.
Okay, can we talk about a couple of how-to things? Because I'm guessing, I'm not looking at the audience, but my guess is they're nodding, and people at home or in the office are nodding. I all want to be that thing. I want to feel happiness. If you're not in that place, what's the starting point? Some self-assessment, a literal or figurative look in the mirror? Explain it a little bit.
Well, it is. It's figuring out what am I getting from my relationships and what would I like more of? We get all kinds of different things from relationships, fun, confidants, people loaning us tools, everything. So what do I need more of? And then to think about how could I reach out to people to get a little more of that or to reach out to new people. And one of the things we talk about is very small actions will do it.
Like what?
Like right now, you could think, who do I miss? Who would I like to say hello to I haven't been in touch with? Take out your phone, send them a little text just to say hi, thinking of you, or send them an email or call them on the phone, and you'll be amazed at what you get back.
What if you don't? I mean, that's one of the things that concern me as I'm reading your book last night in bed. What happens if there's an imbalance? What if you do that self-assessment and you say, that's the person I want to have deeper connections with, I want to have more of a relationship with, but he or she, is a friend or is interested, but not as interested as you are. It seems to me the outcome can be even worse than it was pre-outreach, no?
Well, not everybody's going to respond warmly, right? And not everybody's as into me as I am into them, right? So what I would say is we need to move on. That keep those friends who want to stay distant, but then find other people who want more with you.
Could you describe, I was reading the chapter this morning on social fitness, and there's a story that I hope is aberrational, but I fear is not. Tell us about Sterling Ainsley, this man in Montana that one of your predecessors dealt with.
Yeah.
Tell us his story, if you would. And explain what social fitness is, obviously, Doctor.
Well, this man was a Harvard undergrad, so very privileged, and we thought, boy, this guy's set up to have a great life. And what happened was that he gradually got more and more and more isolated, living alone in a trailer. Even though he had a wife and children, he never saw them.
Yeah.
And he told himself, gee, I need to spend more time doing this. There were things that made him feel like he needed to just stay a recluse. And he was a very lonely man.
But he seemed to be in total denial. I don't know if that's the proper word in your world, because didn't he say, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was his sister he said he felt really close to, and your predecessor said, when was the last time you spoke to your sister? And what did he say, like 10 years ago or something?
Yeah.
Like that. So what's that about?
Well, and that does happen. I mean, we often think stereotypically of men who sort of turn around, pick their heads up in midlife and say, where did all my friends go? I don't have any friends. He was in denial. Many people get to a point where they say, oh, gee, I would like more friends, but I've let them all go. And that's where social fitness comes in. We have this idea that our friends will take care of themselves. I've got my friends, I'll be fine. But what we know is that good relationships wither away from neglect.
Yeah.
And so that's, we're thinking about social fitness as a practice, like physical fitness.
You know, the name of the book is The Good Life, Lessons from the World's Longest Scientific Study of Happiness, Create a More Meaningful and Satisfying Life. Co-authors Mark Schultz, who's not here, and Dr. Robert Waldinger, who is.
You know, you talk about taking a kind of self-inventory, and that some of these questions are difficult questions. So that's explained, right, in the book. So we would know how to take that self-inventory. But what kind of difficult questions are you talking about?
Well, things like, do you feel you can be authentic with other people? Do you feel like you can let yourself depend on other people? Ask for help, because some of us don't do that very easily.
So can I interrupt for a second? This is how pathetic our existence is. This doctor just says, a question, how authentic are you?
Yeah.
Our lead producer looks at me and starts laughing in the middle. I mean, can it get any more disrespectful than this?
Callie agrees wholeheartedly. Yeah.
I mean, this is...
But you have a great story in the, I think it's the intimate relations part, about a guy who I think a lot of us could relate to, who had like a pretty peaceful, happy, non-arguing marriage. But tell us about him, his difficulty being vulnerable and his wife's upsetness over this.
Exactly. He thought everything was fine. And he was having a great life. He was having a great marriage. But his wife and his kids said, this guy is so closed off. He never lets us in. And so they were wanting more closeness. And he was saying, no, everything's fine the way I am. And that's a kind of disconnect that can happen.
So what do you do if you're one of those people who you are one who doesn't want people to see your vulnerabilities? You worry that when I text, which I'm never going to do again, Jamie, our lead producer, but theoretically, if I were to ever text our former lead producer, Jamie, and and by the way, this is there's a piece of this in me, is when you do that, you're basically inviting people in a way that some of us are not always totally comfortable with. So how do you overcome that resistance level?
Well, if you're not comfortable, then you try baby steps. So you don't...
Did you ever see What About Bob, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Baby Steps is the name of the book that Richard Dreyfuss is one of the funniest movies of all time. But
I know, and as a psychiatrist, I found that movie terrifying.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you though. So Baby Steps, give us a, for instance, kind of example of what you'd do if you're that kind of person who's worried about exposing yourself. Not literally, but figuratively, you know what I mean?
Sure. So many of us have friends we've never talked about personal things with. Mm-hmm. You know, we might play basketball together, or, we might go bowling together, whatever. But then what if you try just a little, dipping a toe in the water, like saying, my kid is really having trouble with their homework these days, and I don't know what to do about it. And just see where it goes. See if somebody picks up on it. If they shut you down, then you say, okay, they don't want to go there with me. So you take these small steps. You don't bare your soul right away.
It seemed to me, one of the first questions I asked you, Dr. Waldinger, is about relationships on any level. It can be the most intimate to the most casual, least built one. If you're somebody like that, as I say, there's a small piece of me that has that kind of fear, for lack of a better expression, then maybe you start with the lowest level. I don't mean that in a pejorative way, context. Maybe it is the mail carrier.
Yeah.
Maybe it is the whatever, because you're not about to get into a deep discussion with him or her, and then you build. You're smiling at me like I almost know what I'm talking about. Is that what you're doing?
You do know what you're talking about. Absolutely.
That's pretty incredible. So in any case, we're speaking to Dr. Robert Waldinger. I assume also people say, I don't have time to do this kind of thing. How do you respond to that, other than saying, yes, you do?
Well, because you can multitask. You can... go for your jog and talk to somebody on the phone.
Yeah.
You can. You can talk to someone while you're driving in your car. Now we have all kinds of ways to say, look, it's possible to make time for these connections.
I wonder, we're talking with Dr. Robert Waldinger. The book is The Good Life, Lessons from the World's Longest Scientific Study of Happiness. There was something I read somewhere involving you, that part of babies get attached, or they don't get attached very early on, based on whether they feel as though they're going to get their needs met by their mother, usually, or sometimes their father. But is that something that affects your ability to attach for your whole life? And explain that whole thing if that's true.
It does. We studied that. Did you have warm attachments with your parents? And then how did it play out in your intimate relationship 60 years later?
Yeah.
And it really makes a difference. That having warmer connections in childhood sets you up to have warmer connections with people later on. That doesn't mean that if you didn't have warm connections as a kid, you can't have them later. It just means that it takes some work and some corrective experiences.
And the sense I got from this was that babies being able to trust that their mother would come back, or trust that their mother would take care of their problems, or it transferred into trusting other people as you get older.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why trauma is so terrible, because it teaches kids the world isn't trustworthy, people aren't trustworthy, and that's a terrible thing to carry with you through life.
Yeah, how much harder is doing what you recommend, Dr. Waldinger, in a world like we exist now, where everybody is at everybody else's throat, and you may end up with... I mean, it does create an environment in which your prescription for happiness is a little harder to obtain, is it not?
It is, and it causes me a huge amount of pain and worry about where we're going. But what I would say to people is turn away from those voices that make you feel more closed off from the world and more closed off
Like
from
what?
others. Well, the acronym, you can listen to people's language, and some people's language is more inclusive and makes us feel more connected to each other, and some people's language is designed to do exactly the opposite. And I would say turn away from those voices. They are not our friends.
So tell us a couple of stories that you gleaned from all this research, either someone that wound up being miserable, unhappy, and someone that wound up being happy, maybe using some of the techniques you talked about.
Well, one of the things we found was that it's never too late. There's a chapter in the book about that where we tell stories because people surprise themselves. So we had one man who had a distant marriage and he never had friends, and he said, this has just never happened for me in my life. It's not going to happen. And when he retired, he joined a gym and he found a group of friends, and he found that for the first time in his life, he had a little tribe. And this is what we find, that some people find friendships, they find love in places they didn't expect to, at times they didn't expect to. And so I think the message we get from studying these thousands of lives is that it is never too late for this to happen.
But it seems to me that you also have to be, which is scary to some people, to buy into this, which hopefully everybody will, you have to be a little bit of a risk taker. Do you not?
Yeah, you do. And now you're pointing to something really important, which is it's a little scary to reach out to somebody, even to send that little text. You have to get over this little hump of, ooh, maybe they're not going to want to hear from me. But if you practice, what you get back is usually positive enough that it might keep you going.
Were you screwed up when you were younger and all of a sudden you figured, I'm serious, and you figured this out and you fixed yourself, or what's the deal?
I was kind of an introvert. I was a kind of brainy kid in Des Moines, Iowa, and it wasn't cool to be into school. So,
So how did you experience a conversion to your current self that I assume?
You became a psychiatrist. That's what they all do, right?
No, I'm serious. What was the tipping point for you? What did you do? Did you follow your own advice before you even knew it was your own advice? Is that what broke you out of that thing?
I made myself get over the hump, the inertia of I don't want to talk to anybody, I'm a little scared. I really pushed myself because I found that I was happier when I did push myself.
And it was intentional and you were conscious that you were doing it.
It was intentional and it was hard work for me.
Doctor, we're running out of time here, but I wanted to get a couple more questions in. One is the gender thing with this. When you go out with a bunch of women talk about their relationships. They talk about their boyfriends, their husbands, their dating life, whatever it is. I always tell this story about, when I was married, my husband went out and someone was going through a divorce, and he came back, they had dinner, and he came back and, I said, so what's happening with poor John? How's it going with the divorce? He said, you never mentioned it. And I thought, you never mentioned... No, we talked about politics, we talked about sports. So women would never do that. So what's that about?
My male friend and I went out to dinner last week, and at the end he said, we haven't talked about our kids at all, and our wives are going to want to know what's happening. And so we caught each other up quickly because we knew. So it's exactly what you're saying. I think that, there are styles of connecting that we learn from the time we're kids. women learn to connect differently and around different things than men do. It doesn't mean that relationships are less important to men. It's just that what they're used to doing with each other is different.
But how is it helpful to go out and talk with a bunch of guys about the Patriots?
Well, first of all,
connection. It's a connection, right?
Okay.
Yeah. It's the sense of I belong and I'm connected to you. And this friend, we may not talk about our kids as much as our wives talk about our kids, but we know that if I need him, I can call on him. Like, it really matters.
Okay. Because you do need someone, as you say, to tell your problems to.
Yeah.
Even if it's about Mac Jones and his future with the Patriots.
And when you're in trouble. I mean, when
Yeah.
I was taught as a psychiatrist is the maxim, never worry alone. And if I start to worry, I need people to talk to.
So that's your basic deal is, we'll end where we began, Doctor. This has been really great. By saying...
Do you feel happier, Jim?
I learned a lot. And he gave me his cell, and we'll see how it works out. Okay?
Does this mean I've failed?
No, not yet. You haven't failed.
Not yet.
It's one step, baby steps. I don't know if you've heard of that before. So the most important thing is that people, if they're feeling like they're not in this place, do a self-assessment. Do get a sense. Where is it missing? Who do you want to have a connection with? And then do a baby step thing. If you're a little nervous, at least make some sort of connection.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Exactly.
Okay. By the way, if you're looking for a research assistant, Jamie is really smart, by the way. And he's available, so talk to him during the lunch break.
Okay.
Have I got a data set for you?
Doctor, it was great to meet you. I hope you come back again. You were great.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on a great book with some fascinating longevity about people's lives. We were speaking with Dr. Robert Waldinger. He's director of Harvard's Study of Adult Development and co-author of The Good Life with Mark Schultz. Coming up after the noon news, everyone seems to have an opinion about the embrace of the new Martin Luther King, King sculpture. Some of the opinion is very critical. We were there last week to see its unveiling. We're going to talk about that and more with GBH's Callie Crossley. Right after the news, you're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the Cambridge Homes, a nonprofit independent and assisted living residence proudly serving the Cambridge community and local seniors for more than 130 years. Learn more at thecambridgehomes.org/tradition. If you don't see race, you're not seeing the full picture. Don't miss Basic Black, where you'll find insightful conversations on issues affecting people of color. It's Basic Black, tonight at 7:30 on GBH2.
I'm Pam Johnston, General Manager of GBH News, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Callie Crossley joins us on a black man in Worcester who claims to have been pulled over by police 70 times. Then it's Edgardo Miranda Rodriguez. He's the comic book artist behind the best-selling series La Borinqueña, about a Puerto Rican superhero who battles climate change, among other things. It's been memorialized at the National Museum of American History, and now Miranda Rodriguez is seeing his work on display at Boston University. He'll join us.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Folks from the Boston Opera Collaborative join us for a live music Friday performance. Then we'll open the lines on a subject we touched on
My
yesterday.
life coach is a drag queen with bad oral hygiene. I'm addicted to caffeine. This new love was unforeseen. What shapes can you make with your arms and your legs? What shapes could we make with 4 arms and 4 legs? How many shapes? How many shapes? How many shapes? How many shapes? Fingers count. How many colors can 4 eyes see? How much blood can 2 hearts pump? Now 4 feet a journey. One more hands to share the burden. I'll build a nest for you, get nicely dressed for you. I will be my best for you. Come plant deep roots with me. Munch. Cool. Sweet. Good. It's good.
Google's parent company, Alphabet, says it's laying off 12,000 employees. NPR's Andrea.
Put it this way.
Thanks.
We hired for a
Just make sure we can do it again.
reality from the one we face today. Like many tech companies, Google expanded
Yeah.
during the pandemic.
Come plant deep roots with me. Munch on sweet fruits with me. Grow old and cute with me. Let's get to digging and weeding together in our backyard Eden. I'll dust the soil off the thyme and mint. You'll suck the dirt from my fingertips. That's ridiculous. All that dirt, I can't.
Boston, I'm Henry Santoro. According to our colleagues at Politico, it appears that U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren is preparing to run for a 3rd term. The reports that Warren has reached out to her current and former aides to discuss her campaign.
We can hear you, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. Come plant deep roots with me. Munch on sweet fruits with me. Grow old and cute with me. Let's get to digging and weeding.
Hello, everybody. How you all? This is yours truly, Alan Free. Get your dancing shoes on and welcome to the Rock and Roll Dance Party.
And the reason
Cool.
January
Yeah.
20th is National DJ Day
Next.
is because it's the death anniversary of Alan Freed, who died on this day in 1965. And while it is National Cheese Lovers Day, here's to all the DJs.
Good morning, Quahog. You're here with Dingo and the baby.
Oh my God. And while we're talking DJs and rock and roll, a tip of the hat to 2-time Rock and Roll Hall of Famer David Crosby, who died yesterday at 81.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the estate of Joan B. Kroc, whose bequest serves as an enduring investment in the future of public radio. and seeks to help NPR produce programming that meets the highest standards of public service in journalism and cultural expression.
I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
I'm happier.
That's good. That's great.
I'm happier. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
Not authentic, obviously, but I am happier. We're joined now by GBH's Callie Crossley. She's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley. You can catch her at Sunday nights right here on 89.7 at 6. She's also the host of Basic Black, which airs Friday at 7:30. You can also hear her Callie Commentaries. Those are played on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. Hello there, Callie Crossley.
Hello, Marjorie. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Callie Crossley.
Good to see you.
Well, let's start with some upsetting news. I'm going to play some sound from a man in Worcester, JT, who told our GBH reporter, Sam Turkin, that he'd been stopped black guy, I should say, at least 70 times by the Worcester police. Here's a bit of what he said. This is, I should get it backwards, it's TJ Judy from the GBS News Report.
Every single time. If I make eye contact, officer looks at me, sees my dreads, or he sees I'm black, they're gonna come after me.
70 times, Callie. What'd you make of this?
Actually, I didn't think it was unusual, which is really the sad state of affairs. I don't know if you recall, a few years ago, there was concentrated reporting on driving while black, and this was part of it. I also wanted to reference Charles Ogletree's book that he wrote around the time called The Presumption of Guilt, The Arrest of Henry Louis Gates, Jr., and Race, Class, and Crime in America. And part of the other stories that he profiled in his book were from all of these primarily black men who had just been stopped consistently all across the country. And to see it all in one place, I mean, you see what the issue is. So, my heart, I just felt bad for this guy, but I have to say, I'm not surprised.
I'm sorry, Margaret.
Well, what was also extremely upsetting in this story is these cops got caught over and over again in out-and-out lies, talking about police, these black men resisting arrest and giving them a hard time and all this kind of stuff. And they lied.
Yeah.
And the city has ended up paying millions of dollars. I think it was $4.8 million in lawsuits, which I'm sure Worcester could use for other reasons because they lied.
Right. Well, we've had that conversation here.
Yep.
How many cities have ended up paying all kinds of money because of this kind of situation? And let's not forget, if there had not been video of George Floyd, what did the arrest record say?
Exactly.
So, when
cops say like they did, and the cops may have told the truth in Cambridge, I have no idea, with this man that was suffering some kind of mental breakdown and he had a knife.
Right.
They said he charged toward them.
Right.
You hear that now and you say, really?
Yeah, because, the first thing that comes to mind is the young man who was gunned down 16 shots in his back in Chicago. And similar situation. They said he was coming toward them with a knife, and then when the video came out, we didn't even know there was a video, and somebody dropped a dime, and to this day we still don't know who dropped a dime. I always maintain it was one of those other officers who were made complicit, even though they hadn't discharged their guns. So the one person that did.
There was Laquan McDonald, 16 years old.
Right, and by the way, the video showed that he's walking away from the cops when they said he was approaching.
Right.
By the way, credit to our colleagues, Sam Turkin, Jen Moore, Lisa Wardle, who did some great reporting and work on this thing. A couple of things and the point you made about cameras is very important. Worcester has yet to implement mandatory cameras for all their cops, which is of great significance. And you have this situation in Worcester. You travel a few miles to the west, you have Springfield, which just entered a consent decree with the Department of Justice over the narcotics unit using excessive force. You come to the eastern part of the state, and we could go down a list. Patrick Rose, former cop, serial molester of kids, finally brought to justice, went on to be the union
What
president.
about those Brookline cops that sued?
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And the point being that there is a problem. And I know you're not supposed to do the mandatory, which is of course true. The vast majority of cops do their job well and responsibly. But there's like an epidemic. I mean, the 3 major cities in Massachusetts have had really serious problems around discrimination, abuse, that sort of thing. And it's something, when Healy and Andrea Campbell make their first appearances as Ask the Attorney General and Ask the Governor, I think that statewide situation is something we got to have a conversation with them about.
And of course, this is why people are taking another look at the criminal justice of the police, the police reform bill that was supposed to have done something, and we don't know where that stands. I want to point out that on our website, the piece is entitled "One Black Man Says Worcester Cops Have Stopped Him More Than 70 Times." But because of how Boston and Massachusetts is viewed through a racial lens, some people may say unfairly, on The Root, which is a website which caters to black news, only in Massachusetts does it say, would police stop a single black driver more than 70 times? So just note the assumption there that this is not a surprise.
Do you remember the answer? I'm sure this is not atypical. We've had this experience with lots of people. You asked Val Patrick the other day when the governor and his wife were with us during the dedication and the unveiling of the Embrace, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And you asked him about an incident we'd both read about and he'd told us about in the past that's in his book. And his response to you, and I'll paraphrase, is that was just one of many, just totally matter-of-factly, not for emphasis, but of course, this is what happens kind of thing. And again,
and I think until we had the cameras on the cops or the cell phones with people recording them, white people didn't believe it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to something else, the Embrace that you just spoke about, Jim. There's been a lot of criticism of it, a lot of praise, but a lot of criticism. We hear some sound from Dulce Sloan. She's a comedian on with Leslie Jones.
God, was she funny.
I know. Guest hosting The Daily Show, talking about criticism of the Embrace sculpture, which is down at Boston Common. Here it is.
No matter which way you look at it, it's a different erotic act, right? It's like a sexual Rubik's Cube. Absolutely. Like every time you spin it, like you just gotta take the stickers off and move them around. They never get Martin's statue right. Ever. You saw that monument they put up in D.C.? Look at the statue. I mean, what the hell is this? The man literally marched for freedom. And his statue don't have no legs.
It's pretty funny.
So it was very funny, but it's kind of upsetting at the same
is.
time. So what's your take on this?
Well, I have been in several groups of online discussion since, the criticism hit. First of all, let me just say about myself, I am so completely naive. I was like, what are people talking about? I had no idea the lewd part of it. I just didn't get that at all. So just call me naive. And then I was like, what? I didn't see that at all. But I think seeing it from all sides makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So if you looked at a lot of the criticism, it's from people who mostly saw one side of it. Now, I'm not suggesting that they still might not like it if they saw the rest of it, but I think for the rest of us who saw it and had a different feeling about it, 2 things. We knew what the statue was about and what it was meant to symbolize. Other people came to it fresh. They sort of had a sense of it, but they were, I think, thinking that a memorial to the Kings was going to look differently, and they were not prepared. Most people don't really care for abstract art. I'm making a wild, overstatement, but that's true. And there were other abstract pieces in the selection, in the potential selections, and people didn't like that. So this, I think, came closer to some representational / abstract kind of feeling, but people knew who it was. So for a lot of people, they just don't get it, and they, as Dulce was saying, can we just get one that just looks like, he's the guy and she's, his partner, and we can all recognize it.
Can I say, I think we were a little unfair in the beginning of this discussion. While there are some people who've been critical, the vast majority of people with whom I've spoken and who I've read, I think feel like the 3 of us, that this is maybe the most memorable or one of the most memorable tributes to the Kings. And The important part is the plural, the kings,
right?
Including Coretta Scott King. When we went to Hamilton the other night, my kid and I walked by, my younger daughter and I, and it was underlit and just so incredibly beautiful and also so different. The representation that I don't mean to belittle any other tribute to Martin Luther King, of course, but this is one people are going to remember because it just captures this moment. But let me say one more thing. The person who's been most quoted as critical is this cousin of Coretta Scott King, Seneca Scott, who later told The Guardian, and he was really critical. He later told The Guardian when he was interviewed, one, he was mostly acting out of grief. Two, one of the reasons he was upset was because it was being paid for with public funds, which it was not. And he said he learned that later. And thirdly, he admitted that this is why I use words like woke. Every time you write an article, editors ask me to use more wokes in the article, you get more clicks. I mean, so the guy who has probably been most quoted, other than a columnist who I respect a lot in the Washington Post, is a guy who had no idea what he was talking about and is now admitting it. So I would say the vast majority of people feel really strongly and positively about.
And I never heard of him before, but that's
nor had I. Nor had I. But he's entitled if it's legit. But his opinion was not legit. Apparently.
Somebody said the other day that maybe it would be great to have the picture that it came from on display somewhere near the.
That's so literal. I mean, this is a piece. It's a work. It's art.
Right.
It's art, and let people do a little work, do a little something, and it's just. And I've said this 10 times on the air, and I haven't checked it out myself. The thing the artist told us, which no one else knew about, but I'm sure he was telling the truth, is when you stand on Tremont Street, which we should all try to do, right by the embrace, there is a rectangular piece of cement on which he said the Declaration of Independence is carved out, independence. And in the background, you see the embrace and the juxtaposition, assuming I got it right, is just, it's incredible.
Well, I think it makes a difference if you see all sides of it. I think one side of it does not really give you the sense, and it's hard to see, because as I was responding to the people who were reaching out to me saying, well, what do you think? I said, it's huge, and the massiveness has a lot to do with how you feel when you walk around it and stand inside of it. You know, there's a whole, it's sort of standing inside of it and looking up, there's a kind of a peace that settles over you. It's a different feeling that you would have from sort of standing back, even from the Washington, D.C. Memorial. You stand back and watch it, you know, you're not engaged in it in a way, in a physical way. So, you know, I think there'll be a lot of probably more people making statements until folks come and actually see it.
Very good point.
You know.
Go see it.
And as many people have pointed out, public art gets hammered quite regularly. People either don't understand it, or they don't get it, or they just don't like it. And we all know famously the Vietnam Memorial, which is probably the most moving thing.
Oh my God!
Was hammered right from the beginning.
And she was trashed.
She was trashed. A lot of the veterans didn't like it. But when you go, Maya Lin, excuse me, when you go to Washington, and to me, there's no comparison between, like, I said the other day, the Korean Memorial, which is basically soldiers, and these other grandiose things with people on horseback and stuff. I mean, the Vietnam Memorial.
It's really something.
And
then, you know, originally, I don't think we got the veterans who came to, you know, to pay homage to those they lost and everything. And when their voices were heard, then I think the tide started to change. But
you saw the names.
Yeah, it was ugly, you know, originally. And by the way, the 9/11 piece of outside really takes a page from her work in engraving those names around that piece of granite around the hole.
You know, that's a great point.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say about the 9/11 museum. The inside of the museum has been criticized over and over again for being too graphic, too much, too this, and the outside.
Too representational.
Yeah, so it's like you can't win in some.
Can I? The reason I'm laughing totally inappropriately is I don't know if everybody's seen the Leslie Jones Slum thing.
Yes.
But in the middle of it, I can't remember who says, you know, all these white guys in these statues, they're riding a horse.
Yeah.
So what we got to do is we got to get a real-world depiction of Martin Luther King and put him on a horse.
It was Dulce. It was Dulce because Leslie says back to her, he didn't ride a horse.
That's right, exactly.
So would you put him on a horse?
It was great. Really check it out. We're talking to Callie Crossley.
So meanwhile, there's going to be another statue replacing one of Robert E. Lee down in Roanoke, Virginia, honoring Henrietta Lacks, and she's the woman who died, I think, at 30 or 31 from cervical cancer. So tell us about that.
So if people don't know the story of Henrietta Lacks, there's a best-selling book and many articles about it because it crosses all kinds of arenas, ethics for sure, racism in the country, medical advances, all of that. She was a woman who had cervical cancer, as Marjorie said, and as often happens, some of the doctors took her cells for later use in experiments because they observed that in most patients, the cells would die off after a few days, but hers just kept replicating. So they thought, wow, this is, some material that we can use to try to test it out against other diseases. So from that point on, I forget exactly how many years, but it's been a lot of years, her cells have been everywhere. And the family was never notified of this. They only learned it way, way later. So it was definitely an ethical situation. And of course, she was never asked about that, as she was being, at that point, we hoped, served by doctors to get well, but she didn't get well. Anyway, that's a big deal in medicine. And you can tie those cells to many advances, by the way. Now, there's and very representational, I will say, so that'll answer this argument. It looks just like her statue that's being created by a young black man, and it will take the place in Virginia of the statue of Robert E. Lee, as we know, the leader of the Confederate Army, on a horse. Now, let's remember that Robert E. Lee said himself, "Do not make a statue about me. This is not appropriate." He said that himself before he died. And they went ahead and did it as part of the whole Confederate statues everywhere. But that statue was there, and during a lot of protests during Black Lives Matter, people went right at it because this was just a representation of the worst possible stuff going on in Virginia. So now that statue came down, it was a year ago or so, and hers will replace, and it's going to be renamed the Henrietta Lacks Plaza. I didn't know she was from, I don't think I knew that she was from Virginia.
Well, speaking of didn't know, I don't think Marjorie or I knew till the other day that is it Alabama and Mississippi, speaking of Robert E. Lee, celebrated jointly Martin Luther King, Robert E. Lee Day
Lee Day.
On the 19th. I mean, it's just, what can you say? Can we get one more down note in this conversation? Well, that was not a down note. Actually, that's sort of a beautiful message.
Just one quick thing. I was thinking about, she was so young, and she had cervical cancer, so she knew she was not in good shape. I thought if they had asked her, I mean, maybe it would have given her some solace to think, well, I'm losing my life, but
I can help some other people.
Yeah. And her family could have been proud of that if she decided to do it. So it was just like horrible. Anyway.
Okay, one more horrible thing. Marjorie's favorite governor, Ron DeSantis. You know the book?
Who will never be elected president.
Is the point. Cruelty is the point. The book should have been about this guy. I have never seen, and this includes Donald Trump, someone who is as relentlessly committed to hurting people in every way they can. The latest is about this AP course. Tell that, and then we'll add the other parts of the story.
All right, so this AP course about African-American history, which he has now officially banned in a letter to state education saying that the course violates state law. If you recall, Florida is one of those states that says you can't teach certain information about race or American history where race is involved. And, quote, lacks educational value. This was a course that was going to be launched in 60 high schools and was set to expand. He's also trying to reach out beyond the high school to colleges asking, I think I've forgotten about this, trying to get a survey about what kids, what young people who are in school are LGBTQ, who have asked about undergoing transitional therapy or whatever. I mean, the guy is just...
Well, can we talk about that for a minute? In that case, this gender dysphoria treatment data, and in fairness, he's not asking for names. He's asking for numbers of people, dates, etc. However, if you're a kid who's going through this treatment or wants to go through this treatment, and you're among the most vulnerable people in the society, do you think you're reassured when someone says to you, well, the governor's not looking for your name? Why would you believe
Well, wait a minute,
that that's not next? But
you've made the universities turn into some kind of,
exactly, reporting, surveillance
yeah.
state. It is so gratuitously cruel.
Isn't there some HIPAA? I mean, I know they're not asking for the names, but isn't that in violation of your medical privacy?
He probably crafted it in such a way, since it doesn't have a name attached, at least as the moment. But I really don't know if I've seen a politician who has gone out of his way as relentlessly to cause pain to people, almost all of whom, including Don't Say Gay, LGBTQ people, who have suffered enough pain and, if anything, need an embrace from a political leader, not this kind of savagery. It's just unbelievable.
He's counting on building a base of people who do not like any of this, and he thinks that it's a big enough base to carry him, up the chain, and that he can outdo Donald Trump.
I would say that's a good analysis.
Yeah, and I cannot say how wrong I think he is.
I hope he's wrong.
I am no fan of Donald Trump,
Yeah.
but Donald Trump had a certain charisma where if you saw him on television, if you couldn't stand him, you might look at him because there's something, because he was on.
This guy's just a bully, and
this
he comes
guy
off as a bully.
is whiny and nasty, and I just don't think. I remember back when they were deciding, when the evangelicals were deciding that they were going to, because they were trying to, when the private schools were integrated in the South, and they realized that even if you were a big-time racist, you probably didn't want to hurt little 6-year-old and 7-year-old black kids who couldn't go to school because they were shutting down the schools. I can't help but think that hurting children like this, even if you are a big-time racist, you really a 15-year-old girl who wants to go to college and take this class, I don't think he'll play nationally. I really don't know.
Donald Trump put little kids in cages.
That's right.
He was already elected. He was already elected.
And after he did, he got 75 million votes.
That's true.
Well, again, I think Donald Trump was uniquely attractive to people for a lot of reasons, including that he'd been on television for 10 years, building his TV persona. You ever hear this guy talk? I mean, he's got the whiniest voice you can even imagine. He just looks creepy.
Well, if people are looking for an alternative to Trump, and many are, I think he's the guy.
I know. He's lead, but I could be proven wrong. I just don't think he can fly nationwide. But what do I know? I've been wrong a million times. So anyway, let's talk about something else.
Okay.
This is about the people that had big-time parents for stars.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
This conversation has just really gotten wild.
Yeah, or in some cases, sisters. The Olsen, the younger of the Olsen sisters, was asked about nepotism. How did you basically make it because your parents were stars, or because you had great talent? Some of them were very, very honest, I think. Who was the one that said? Who was the model? Was it Kim Bassinger's daughter and Alec Baldwin's daughter who said she never would have made it as a model?
Yeah.
If she didn't have them as parents. And I looked at her pictures and I thought, you probably would have made it as a model, actually. But what's the thesis here?
Well, I don't know how this initially started. It's one of those things where I need to go back online to see where it got started. But they put together all these profiles of what they're calling Nepo babies, nepotism babies. I guess it's Nepo babies, nepotism babies of the stars that you would recognize, or other important people who got a leg up, or more than a leg up, got their first, second, and maybe even third opportunity because simply they're the children of. Now, as we know, some of them have turned out to be quite talented. But as one of the commenters said, hey, but how many other people are talented, didn't have those connections, and didn't get a shot because these people were crowding out the space? So as Marjorie said, a few of the folks came forward and said, yeah, I mean, I knew I had famous parents, and I worked hard. I wanted to work hard. A couple of them used different names because they didn't want to attract. Denzel Washington's son said for a long time he never said what his dad did. He said he was a plumber.
He was the best one, by the way.
Yeah.
He was the one I admired most. Let me tell you something. If my parents were really famous, I'd go into banking. I mean, you know what I was thinking? When we were lucky enough, and you were with us, we met the King family for the first time the other day. Martin Luther King III, his incredible wife, and his more incredible 14-year-old daughter. How hard does it have to be?
Right.
To be, and he's not trying to be. He's trying to essentially extend his father's legacy and make sure his work is honored and his mission goes forward. How hard has it got to be?
Well, I keep thinking about her. The granddaughter,
Yeah.
like you're the only granddaughter, and as
The
it happens,
only granddaughter
you
with
have
4
all
kids.
of the skills, the charisma, the whatever.
Exactly. At
What if
14.
you would like to go into banking? You're kind of, I mean, seriously, people are going to say, "Are you kidding? No, you can't go into banking. You're the legacy."
Yeah,
that's a
it's
tough
hard,
one.
though. It's
That's
really
a tough
You know what
one.
I liked? I liked
yeah.
Zoe Kravitz's answer too, because she was in that Big Little Lies, and she was absolutely terrific. I thought she's been in a
She
lot
was
of
great.
stuff. She's the kid of
Lisa Bonet and
Lenny Kravitz.
Lenny
and Lisa
Kravitz,
Bonet.
yeah.
She said, which I thought was an interesting point too. It's completely normal for people to be in the family business. It's literally where the last names come from. If you were a blacksmith, your family was like the Black family. But I thought the idea of you going into the family business, you meet a lot of people that are not in show business.
Right.
They're, we can all think of people that went into the newspaper business or
Right.
went into different careers because their families, they grew up in that kind of family. So that was
Well,
good.
I mean, in the newspaper business, we ran across, I have a lot of Nepo babies as well. And that we're still seeing it. I mean, Jenna Bush Hager is on the Today Show.
That's right.
I don't think it's because of her innate talent.
That's W's kid. Phil.
Yeah,
I'm with
yeah,
you, unfortunately.
you know,
Okay,
you know.
so enough of Nepo or Nepo or whatever babies. What are you doing this weekend?
It would have been the almost 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. Actually, on Sunday, that is the actual, would have been 50th anniversary. So we are talking with women who had abortions pre-Roe, had abortions after Roe.
Grace,
And reflecting on the state of the reproductive healthcare movement in general, what happens afterwards, particularly the medical abortions, where does that fit, all of that. That's the first half of the show. The last half of the show is an incredible book by Josh Prager called The Family Roe, An American Story. And he goes back and details all of this information none of us knew about Norma, who was Jane Roe in the Roe versus Wade story, and how her story overlapped with all these other people, including Justice Blackmun, who wrote the original position. Also traces the movement, the two opposing movements for and against abortion. Did you all know that when Walter Cronkite announced it on the day that the Supreme Court ruled on it, it got less than 4 minutes attention? Nobody was riled about this. Nobody. This was a thing that was grown into. So it's a really compelling hour about both the history and the current state of where we are on
Didn't
this.
the plaintiff in later life become anti-choice? Did
Yes.
she not later in life?
And guess what? I'll give you this one thing that came from his book that I did not know. She was gay.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Hello, and she never had an abortion.
Yeah,
Those are just two things.
She had the baby,
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah, because it was too late.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll be
There's
listening.
so many other things. It's amazing.
Kelly, it's great to see you.
Oh,
Thank
good
you
to
so
see
much.
you.
Kelly Crossley.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Callie Crossley. Callie Crossley is the host of Under the Radar, which you can catch Sunday nights here on 89.7 at 6 o'clock. She's also the host of Basic Black, which airs Fridays at 7:30. And you can hear her Callie commentaries every Monday for GBH's Morning Edition. Thanks a lot, Callie. Coming up, he is a comic book writer and an artist, a philanthropist, a creator of independent superhero comic series, La Borinqueña, and the man who connected Marvel's Groot. I was Groot, right?
You say Grout?
Grout. That's what you have around your bathtub.
He's a bricks and
He's
mortar
not
kind of
Grout,
guy.
he's
Exactly.
Groot. With his
Oh,
Puerto
my
Rican
God.
roots, Edgardo Miranda Rodriguez is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBA.
Lunar New Year is on Sunday. For those around the world who observe, it's a time to gather with friends and family.
Always during this week of the holiday, they come back to home and they make a lot of good food to celebrate the special occasion.
What some families are cooking up this year, and tips for making your own meal on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Two years ago, spurred by a wave of outrage nationwide, Massachusetts passed a landmark police reform law. But how much has really changed, and what else still needs to be done? I'm Adam Riley. Tonight on Talking Politics, we'll dig into those questions and look at the brewing fight over rent control in Boston, which could have big implications for communities across the state. Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2 and online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. And Mission Safe, working comprehensively with Boston's youth to provide personal growth, workforce development, and more. Details at missionsafe.org. That's missionsafe.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live at the Boston Public Library. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by Edgardo Miranda Rodriguez, philanthropist, graphic novelist, creative director, creator of La Borinqueña, a superhero fighting climate doom and for the future of Puerto Rico. His work has been featured in the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History in D.C. Now it's on display at BU's exhibit titled, we talked about this yesterday briefly, Comics is a Medium, Not a Genre, viewable now through March 24th. And that's in addition to an exhibit with the Pennsylvania School of Art and Design, which also opened this week. Edgardo, not only is it great to meet you, I have to make an admission up front. I'm not into comics. This is fabulous. Your stuff, it really is. Your stuff is beautiful and strong and great. It's really great to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here. So tell us about her, La Borinqueña. What's her deal?
So La Borinqueña is an original character that I created in 2016. We're entering the 7th year of this series being published. And it was more of a response to the humanitarian crisis that was created by the austerity measures, the economic crisis, and also the climate crisis affecting Puerto Rico. Now, those who follow environmental studies and sciences familiarly refer to the Caribbean islands as, in the Greater Antilles, as the Atlantic Basin or the Hurricane Basin. And for many years, scientists have been saying that Puerto Rico, particularly a consortium of German scientists under the name German Watch, put together a comprehensive study that said Puerto Rico will be, unfortunately, seeing one climate disaster after another. And we have actually seen that, because just before the pandemic, there was a series of earthquakes that hit Puerto Rico. In fact, this is kind of like the 3rd anniversary. We're literally in the midst of it right now this month. And obviously before that was Hurricane Maria, and then just recently, Hurricane Fiona. So the book was an opportunity to engage readers in a popular cultural genre of superhero storytelling, because it's pretty much dominating everything in media. I mean, and it's everywhere from streaming platforms to toys to video games to underwear. Superheroes are everywhere, right? So I understood that and created this character with the symbolism and the iconography of superhero storytelling, even inspired by the work of Superman when it was first published by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. And many people see this as a corporate icon, but when he was first published by these two Jewish American artists and writers, he was in a story that was talking about anti-fascism, was addressing domestic violence, and that was in the first issue that he appeared in Action Comics. So La Borinqueña is kind of like a throwback to the original volumes of comic books that really spoke to real issues. And before these comic book companies were part of these multi-billion-dollar empires that we see now producing content internationally, they were small independent publishing houses that literally just put together comic books that we would get every week.
Were you a comic book kid?
Oh my gosh, yeah?
Excuse me. So tell us, what were you into when you were a little boy?
Well, I was into Marvel and DC comics. I was into superhero storytelling. I especially loved Spider-Man for the same reason that Stan Lee referred to him as the everyman, because anyone could be Spider-Man under the mask. And we see that because this generation now embraces an Afro-Puerto Rican as Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Mm-hmm. So my two sons are looking at Spider-Man as a Puerto Rican. I grew up with Jewish American Peter Parker, so we both have two different versions of the same character.
You know, I wonder what kind of reaction you're getting from people who live in Puerto Rico.
It's an incredibly positive reaction, but not only in Puerto Rico, but across the diaspora. And what many people don't know, some years ago, the New York Times did a poll, and they deduced that half of the American public don't even acknowledge or understand that Puerto Ricanos have been U.S. citizens for over a century
Including
now.
a former president, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here in Boston, we have a historic community, Via Victoria, that was created and fought for almost 50 years ago by Puerto Ricanos. And even though the area around it has developed and gentrified and displaced many, that still becomes a stronghold for Puerto Rican culture here in Boston. And that's reflective of the diaspora across the United States. And the response has been incredibly positive. More so because Latinas, Puerto Ricanas are seeing themselves in a genre, in a medium that is dominated by white male narratives.
Yep.
So that, is, for me, is important because I'm entering into the space not only for philanthropic reasons, but also for storytelling purposes as well.
Do you know, yesterday we had on the show two guests who were the stars of Hamilton, which just opened the road company. Do you know from New York City, Pierre Jean Gonzalez? Do you have a relation?
No, but I know Lynn.
Okay, well,
I know Lynn
you
Manuel.
do know?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
We're not related.
Okay. We're like.
I mean, we're
hold
Puerto
my
Rican.
question for a
We're
second,
Puerto Rican,
Ron.
so we might be somehow
Yeah.
related, but no, we're not
Well, I
related.
was just going to ask you. I mean, he's like a total, complete genius. I've never seen anything like this musical. Nobody has, and everybody says it's the best thing they've ever seen. So, I mean, when you talk to him, do you have any idea that he's got a brain the size of Mount Everest or what?
Well, he's a consummate genius. He's constantly writing. He's constantly creating. And I think when you're in this headspace of being a person of color in our nation, you have to raise the standard higher than your typical white male storyteller. And I think that's what I've been finding myself to do. I don't have the platform that Lynn has, but in my small way, I'm entering into a field which is dominated by multi-billion-dollar corporations that are publishing these books, and I'm doing it independently, but yet I'm still having this mainstream conversation with you both this afternoon, which shows that there's an intersectionality to the work that I'm doing that's making it more viable for these kinds of discourses.
Before Marjorie had a little stroke over Lin-Manuel Miranda a minute ago.
Sorry.
I mentioned Pierre Jean Gonzalez, who did a brilliant job as Hamilton in this road company. And one of the things we broached with him yesterday is, while almost nobody has a critical word to say about Hamilton, the only critical thing I've ever heard, which we addressed to both guests, was what's up with people of color playing white historical figures. And his response to that, I think, is exactly what your response is vis-a-vis the importance of these comics. I'm paraphrasing him, he said it much more eloquently than I. He said, we're part of history. We finally get to see ourselves on the stage. It is totally natural and is long overdue. And when you think about the growth of the Latino population in this country, which is huge and one of the fastest growing populations, and I'm guessing, even though I don't have the data, the representation of Latinos in popular culture, there's a huge sort of disconnect. And I'm guessing
there's a major
this is part of the hole you're trying to fill,
There's
right?
a major disparity. The Annenberg Foundation recently produced studies that spoke specifically to this. There's an incredible disparity in the margin of consumers and representations. As the Latinx population, we are overwhelmingly underrepresented, and not just on the screen, on the page, in conversations, in mainstream media, like even having the opportunity for us to be on the other side of the microphone as hosts of shows like this, for example. There's an underrepresentation, and oftentimes we're relegated to Spanish language. But I'm a first-generation Puerto Riqueño. English is my first language, and when stories are told, it's important that these stories reflect our experience as U.S. citizens growing up in this nation, and that our stories aren't just international stories. So when we have the successful film of Encanto, it's a beautiful story, but it's set in Colombia. It's not set in Jackson Heights. And there are so many rich stories that can be told from the Latin experience here. I kind of like flip that on its head with La Borinqueña because the stories are told in Puerto Rico, but since Puerto Rico is a colony of the United States, everything that happens in Puerto Rico happens in the U.S.
What kind of superpowers does she have?
So the character is based on the formula for superhero storytelling. Many people aren't aware, but superhero storytelling draws its inspiration from Greek, Norse, Roman mythology, even the Bible. I mean, Superman is basically Moses. So understanding that, I did some research, and the indigenous peoples of the Caribbean islands, the Greater Antilles, are the Taínos. The Taínos had their own belief system, and they believed in goddesses and gods. they refer to them as semis. Atabe was a supreme goddess. So Atabe presents herself to La Borinqueña when Marisol, who's her real name, finds these ancient artifact crystals that open up a portal and allow her to communicate with the goddesses and gods. And they provide her with elemental superpowers. So the Tainos were very connected to nature, very connected to the earth. So the powers are reflective of that. She can fly because she can manipulate the wind. She has superhuman strength that come from the seas and the mountains. And as a storyteller, I created a myth around the actual star itself, which allows her to communicate with these goddesses and gods.
Tell us about some of the other great characters. Luz, Sophia. Describe some of the players in this beautiful construct you put together.
Well, one of the things that I really enjoy about storytelling, and I recall there was actually an article written by The Guardian when they first reviewed our first book when it was published in 2016, and they referred to it as an incredibly multi-diverse cast of characters. But oftentimes, when people don't understand how diverse organically the Latinx community is, they will say things like that. We're an ethnic group that comprises of indigenous, African, Asian, and European. So we look like us here. We look like this studio audience here. We're a range, a rainbow. So the characters are reflective of that. And so one of the characters is actually getting her own spin-off series this year, Luz La Luminosa. Luz is actually a character of Asian Latinx origin, because what many people aren't aware of, in the early 1800s, when the Chinese Exclusionary Act was introduced here in the United States, the most xenophobic act in the history of the United States, the immigration of Asians didn't stop. And although it was the Chinese Exclusionary Act, it excluded all Asians, because nobody was checking to see if you were Korean or Vietnamese at the border. So Chinese and other Asians continue to immigrate to the Americas. And there's about 5% of the Latino population in Latin America, South America, and the Caribbean identify as Asian. So we created a character to also reflect that. Sophia is actually an activist in the story, because we need to have characters that also don't have superhero powers. But what's great about this character that I wrote in the series is that we see her evolution. From someone who exhibits a form of colorism in her vernacular to someone who's actually kind of like embracing the reality of what it is to live in a colony in 2023.
You've also been very involved in raising money, nonprofits for Puerto Rico. Tell us about that.
So we had this amazing opportunity just weeks after Hurricane Maria. I was at the New York Comic Con, and I had a chance meeting with Dan DiDio, then publisher of DC Comics, who had a conversation with me about our work, because at the time, and even to this day, we're the only comic book series that actually has a Puerto Rican woman as a lead, literally the titular character of the book. After this conversation with DC Comics, we came to an understanding that we should do a crossover book. This crossover book would be called Reconstruction. It won me the comic book industry's highest honor, the Eisner, for the humanitarian work. It became a #1 bestseller for 4 months straight on Amazon.
Wow.
Helped us raise $250,000, which we invested to create a grants program. Because oftentimes in a crisis, in a disaster, there's an immediate response. It's part of our human nature, but it's also part of our human nature to forget.
Mm-hmm.
So after a few weeks, it leaves the news cycle. In fact, when Hurricane Fiona hit Puerto Rico this last fall, within a few weeks, the news cycle took us across the ocean to England to address the Queen's funeral. And Puerto Rico was completely forgotten in this discourse. So our work is reflective and understands that. So we've created this fund that for the last 6 years, we've been using to award microgrants to nonprofits. So we're returning to Puerto Rico in April to do another series of grants that we'll be awarding. And we just recently announced an RFP, a request for proposals, so that nonprofits in Puerto Rico can actually apply with their ideas and that we can support it. So we're easily the only superhero series that is directly connected to social justice in the space of philanthropic work.
Speaking of social justice, voting is social justice. Is Rosario Dawson a buddy of yours?
I would like to call Rosario, like, she has various titles of me. She's an hermana, she's my sister, she's an ally, she's a fan. I recall about 6 years ago, she reached out to me personally, and I got this blind call from her, and she's like, "Hi, it's Rosario. I want to have a La Borinqueña costume made." I'm like, you can't exactly go to Target and get it off the rack. So
not yet.
But I can help you out. And within a day, literally within 24 hours, she had a costume made. She was on Sunset Boulevard for Halloween, dressed up as La Borinqueña. So Rosario has been working with us for many years, doing a lot of public service announcements.
Mention what she did. We're going to play it in a second. Mention what she did in Georgia during the runoff in 2021.
Rosario Dawson co-founded Voto Latino, which is a nonprofit organization that does voter advocacy and voter education across the United States. And I like to call it nuestro granito de arena, like our little grain of sand that actually pushed the voter turnout. Historically, this was the largest voter turnout in the last general election from the Latinx community in the history.
This is Ossoff and Warnock in that critical election.
Right.
Yes.
Here's a little piece of the PSA with the great Rosario Dawson. Here it is.
Georgia's runoff election is today. It's January 5th, 2021. I'm La Borinqueña, and I've teamed up with Voto Latino to ensure that Latinx Georgians line up to vote in this runoff election. Today, our vote in Georgia is how we use our power. We will not waste one vote. We are making a difference in this runoff election.
I love that.
Thank
You know, Edgardo, I wondered, you mentioned, the lack of representation of Latinos in media and theater and all this kind of stuff. But this does seem, Superman, Catwoman, this seems like a natural movie to me. And especially, and I just
From
wonder,
your lips, he's thinking,
well,
right?
but you do wonder how much bias there is against doing something, even though the population, as you say, is growing so largely, the Latinx community.
It's all about value.
Yeah.
And it's about who those, who are literally making the deals, who are the ones that are literally opening the doors, right? And if they don't have and see an inherent value in our audience and our community, they don't see an inherent value in our stories. But these studies show that, we are, as a people in the U.S., one of the largest consumer populations.
Yeah.
We are close to 30% of the box office draw, but we're less than like 5% of the actual characters. And we're talking about secondary and tertiary characters that when we actually are on the screen. You don't see stories where we're the lead. Mm-hmm. And when we do see stories, we don't see stories that speak to our experience living here in the United States. Again, just to reiterate, we see these international stories like the Netflix hit Narcos, which oftentimes the stories tend to center around vilified narratives of the Latin experience when many of us are storytellers, librarians, scientists, it's like, no, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about Narcos. I don't know anything about that.
Edgardo, Marjorie's going to give the website in a minute when we bid you farewell. But before we do, we briefly mentioned the BU thing that's running through March 24th. Tell us a little bit about what's happening there.
Well, that's an incredible exhibition that was curated by Professor Joel Christian Gill at Boston University. And it's quite easily the most comprehensive collection of U.S. published comic books for close to the last 100 years, really? Including La Borinqueña, but also the first comic strip ever illustrated and written by Charles Schulz, which is on loan from the Library of Congress. So I implore everyone to check it out. It's a free exhibition. It's at 855 Commonwealth. And it's probably going to blow you away because, like the title, comic books aren't just a genre. In fact, there's nothing but multiple genres in this industry. And La Borinqueña is literally like the only thing that's superhero in that exhibition. You're going to actually see how diverse this actual medium of storytelling
Your work is fabulous and
Thank
really
you. Thank
exciting.
you so
It's a
much.
pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for coming
Thank you
today.
very, very much
Thank you.
for being with
That
us,
was great.
Edgardo. We've been speaking with Edgardo Miranda Rodriguez, creator of La Borinqueña series. If you want to buy one of his books, which support philanthropic work in Puerto Rico, visit laborinqueña.com. I'm going to spell
There's a hyphen in there, though, right? Is
I'm
there
going to
not?
spell for you. La dash. Well, is that a hyphen or a dash when it's raised
Same
up?
thing.
Is it? Okay. It's in the middle. It's not the one that's down
It is.
below.
Thank you.
But I'm going to spell it for you. It's B as in boy, ORINQUEN as in Nancy, A.com. laborinqueña.com. And you can also check out Comics is a Medium, Not a Genre at BU's Stone Gallery through March 24th. That's Boston University. Thank you, Edgardo, very
Really
much.
good
And
to both have you.
congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
After a quick break, we're going to talk about the big quit finally hitting New Zealand with Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern opting to step down after a commendable 6-year run. We'll get thoughts from media maven Sue O'Connell on that and on the involuntary manslaughter charges brought against Alec Baldwin, plus the latest on George Santos. Now, apparently he's a Brazilian drag queen as well as his other activities. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
2 years ago, spurred by a wave of outrage nationwide, Massachusetts passed a landmark police reform law. But how much has really changed, and what else still needs to be done? I'm Adam Riley. Tonight on Talking Politics, we'll dig into those questions and look at the brewing fight over rent control in Boston, which could have big implications for communities across the state. Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2 and online at gbhnews.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Bridgewater State University, offering a wide variety of graduate classes at night and online to help accommodate working professionals. Learn more at bridgew.edu/gradclass. And Eversource, committed to helping your business reach its sustainability goals. You can learn more about custom recommendations to help reduce your carbon footprint and lessen your environmental impact at eversource.com.
Trusted, local, news. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Bradley and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We have some unbelievable music coming to you in about 20 minutes, so please stick around. Here to take on the social norms and abnormalities of the day is media maven Sue O'Connell. Sue is not just the co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News and contributor to current NBC, Alex, and NECN. She is also the only guest we have who leads applause for herself like this. Go right ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's rather embarrassing,
no
but we're very glad to have you.
No family.
It's amazing. This is
but
real.
They're still all real people.
Sort of real, yes. Thank you. Nice to see you, Sue.
Nice to see you.
So let's start with New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern. She's been the prime minister over there, I think, for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
She's got 2 little kids. She announced she's stepping down. What she said was, I know what this job takes. I know that I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice. It's that simple, she said. And she's leaving. What do you make of this?
I think it's amazing that it's newsworthy. I mean, it should be newsworthy anyway. I'm not saying that somebody leading a country saying they're not seeking re-election or another term isn't newsworthy, but that she's actually being open and honest, that she feels that she has done has as much as she can give, and she's certainly not going to step out of politics for good with the profile that she has internationally. And COVID's been tough on everybody, and the way that she led that nation and the COVID response,
very few deaths,
was amazing. And of course, she took a lot of heat, both positively and negatively, from folks. It put her on the radar of a lot of folks who never would have even known she existed had COVID not happened and had she not taken the approach, the very practical approach that she took. And being a woman in politics is not easy, and she certainly has taken her share of sexist and misogynistic attacks. Having said that, she also has gone on to talk about how she feels like the COVID policy has become what identifies her politics, when she had other goals, that like everybody else had other goals that she wanted to do, but she's just not sure she has it in her after the past 6 years.
You know what else she did? Well, let's play some sound from her first, and then we'll talk about what else she did. Here she is, Jacinda Ardern, announcing that she's leaving by February 7th.
Today I'm announcing that I will not be seeking re-election. After going on 6 years of some big challenges, I am human. Politicians are human. We give all that we can for as long as we can, and then it's time. And for me, it's time.
I have a feeling you two wanted to talk about this for different reasons. I admire her greatly. I didn't want to talk about it because I admire her greatly, and she did, I think, wonderful work, even though her popularity is on the decline because she hasn't accomplished some of her, let's call it, social justice goals she's promised. What struck me is this is a woman who's, like 50 years old?
Not even
47 or something, whatever she is, who is, to use her words, my tank is empty. Compare that to Senator Grassley just running for re-election, and you may love him or hate him, it's not about that. At 88, he'll be 94 if he completes a full term. There's a president thinking for running election in his 80s, re-election, a former president. Nobody in this culture, in this country, can ever give up power. I know there are exceptions, very few exceptions. And here's a woman who is a world admired throughout the world, even, again, though she's having some problems at home, who decides for totally honest reasons, I think, that it's just, right now, it's time for me to go. How incredibly impressive is that?
I mean, I think, actually, I mean, that's what I sort of meant, where it it should be newsworthy. I mean, this is, this is something that we don't get to experience, especially here in the United States. Whenever you speak to, and not just women, but whenever you speak to an elected official, someone gets elected to Congress, we immediately start asking, what's next? How long are you going to serve?
Exactly.
What are you going to do? And then if they decide they're not going to run for re-election, we think there's something wrong with them.
Exactly
why are you stepping aside? Paul Ryan, look at Paul Ryan, right? Paul Ryan, again, to your point, whether you agree or disagree with his politics, he became Speaker of the House for the Republicans. It was a terrible job, right? I'm certain he looked in the mirror, a young man who had all the future of the Republican Party ahead of him, and said, I don't think I have it in my tank.
To deal with these,
these nut jobs.
Exactly.
And he didn't say that. He just said, I'm going to step aside. So we look at it as a failure if someone decides they don't want to do something longer than a period of time. And at the same time, we also criticize them for having ambition.
Well,
right?
I mean,
so it's a double-edged sword.
We can't imagine in this country why anyone will ever give up power voluntarily. Right. And I give her credit for what she did in her 6 years for that act.
I just want to mention, people may recall that horrible slaughter in 2019 when more than 50 Muslims were gunned down by this white supremacist gunman. She managed to ban assault weapons in New Zealand, which I thought
almost overnight, by the way.
Yeah, which is really, really something. And she also, worried about climate change down there, she pushed through this bill, as the Associated Press is reporting, targeting net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And she was viciously attacked in very misogynist ways on her death threats, on her character. There was a big fire where these protesters set fire to all these mattresses and stuff when they were protesting outside. Her office was attacked. I mean, she was really... And she's got 2 little kids, and I think she wanted to hang around with them a little bit more, and she wanted to get married.
Right.
You're allowed to get married when you're the prime minister, by the way. But
well, I think it underscores something else which women have to deal with.
Yeah, you're right.
How much can you work when you've got children to raise?
It's still.
Barbara Walters talked about it.
Yeah, it still falls on women. It still falls on the mother for the most part.
Okay, so my assessment, I'm not much of a political consultant, as you well know. However, if I were George Santos, not only would I not be denying that I was an attractive drag queen in Brazil, I'd be trumpeting that I was an attractive drag queen in Brazil, which he apparently was. This is today's installment of the Congressman George Santos, Congressman Anthony Davaldi.
Keep going.
Whatever his
name is.
There's
a lot of them.
Saga. So what do you think of this drag queen story?
Katara,
that's her name, right?
Katara is allegedly Santos's
not allegedly.
Drag.
You see the picture? I mean, it's
Drag
George
name.
Santos.
And listen, I just want to be clear. The Republicans have been warning us for several years that drag queens are dangerous, okay? They have been saying, please don't let them in your libraries. Please don't let them near your children. And you know why? Because they knew. They knew that George
Santos,
whatever his name is today,
George
Santos was a drag queen. And they were absolutely correct that we can't trust them. Because look, we don't know. I'm being sarcastic and humorous, of course. Yeah, it's just amazing. What I love most about this whole saga, which is not going to end. I mean, we're not.
It is going to end at some point.
It's not.
He is going to go.
Not. He's how old is he? I think he's got about 28 lives for every day.
He's only like 40 or something.
Yeah, he's got a million.
I don't know.
It's just, and then we're going to have
president someday.
We're going to probably
President
we're going to have
Katrina.
the Netflix.
What's his drag name again?
It's Katara.
President Katara. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful drag queen. By the way. It was beautiful.
So too.
We're going to get a Netflix series. We're going to get a book. We're going to get a podcast. It's just not going to end. But I just love how the Republicans have now just decided, since that seat in New York, which he won very narrowly by, if they forced him to resign, would probably go to a Democrat at this side. So they're just going to hold their nose. And the New York Times did a great piece. I don't know if you guys talked about it this week, about how he just adorned this costume, not the drag one, but what he's wearing now, to sort of fool people into thinking, he's an intellectual with the glasses. He's dressed like our, beloved executive producer, Jamie, who is authentically this way, I would say.
One woman's opinion. One last thing.
Again.
One last thing, if we can, here is Marty and I are pretty excited. On Monday, We will have, is he coming in the studio? He is, isn't he? Coming in studio is George Santos' roommate for a few months, who not only lived with George Santos, who lived with George Santos' mother, which is pretty incredible since she died on 9/11. So that's a whole other story.
In the South Tower.
And the South. So
even though she wasn't on the continent.
Exactly. It's an amazing feat.
Stay tuned on Monday, whatever it is. You know what I'm embarrassed about this. Sometimes you get so lost. I assume this happens to you too, doing what we all do for a living. You get so lost in the story that you never step back. And there was a piece we read in anticipation of you coming today about a special counsel investigating a sitting president. By the way, today we're not going to say how different the two cases are. I can't stand this anymore. It's totally true. We know it's true.
Right.
Move on. We have a special counsel investigating a sitting president, and we have a special counsel investigating the president who came before the sitting president. It's pretty amazing moment in history.
It is, and I've got a number of conflicting feelings about all of it. It's a special counsel for a reason. It's supposed to be special, right? It's supposed to be an extraordinary circumstance where they ask for the special counsel so that allegedly there's no politics involved and they can do the investigation free from the pressures of whomever the president is or whoever the party in charge is. But at the same time, it makes me feel good that maybe someone will look at something, look at it objectively, give us an answer, and then we can move on or consequences can be dealt out. But at the same time, I just keep going back to Kenneth Starr,
Who totally...
Kenneth Starr's mission was to investigate Whitewater with Bill Clinton, and we ended up with an impeachment of Bill Clinton over his perjuring himself over his relationship with Monica Lewinsky. I don't think any of us ever want to be investigated for any reason, especially if they have the ability to look at anything you're doing. So, I feel like I guess this is where we are now. It's not going to be that special anymore to have special counsels investigating presidents and former presidents. I mean, it's also interesting, too, Jim, because even though they're investigating President Biden, it's a special counsel investigating basically something that happened under the Obama administration in a way, because the documents came from Vice President when he was vice president. So when we look at this string of special investigations, it just seems like a norm now.
Well, if it becomes a norm, maybe one thing, I haven't thought about this till you said it, maybe we should create an office of extra special counsel. What do you think that is? So we really know that we really mean it in this circumstance?
Yeah, like it's like super duper special.
Like just Can you think about that and get back to us?
I will. Just have a run-of-the-mill investigation and then special.
No, run-of-the-mill special, as opposed to really special is another level. We're talking to Sue O'Connell.
Yes, and she's our media maven. So back to her media maven role. The actor Alec Baldwin is going to be charged now with involuntary manslaughter for handling the gun that he set off on the set of this Western Rust, and he killed the cinematographer, Hanya Hutchins, and wounded its director, Joel Souza. And here's a little sound of Alec Baldwin speaking with investigators about the 2021 incident that resulted in
this
death.
is right after, by the way, the shooting. It's
right
not
after,
current,
a month or two, I think, right after, right?
Yeah.
Here he is.
All the rounds, I was told, you need to verify, I think this is important, they take the gun, they enter and all the rounds that are in there were either dummy rounds, no flash, cold rounds, or rounds with a flash. In the rehearsal, there should have been nothing. It should have been a cold gun with no rounds inside or dummy rounds, cosmetic rounds, no flash. I take the gun out slowly, I cock the pistol, bang, it goes up, she hits the ground, she goes down. He goes down, screaming.
They haven't figured out why there were live bullets in this gun in the first place, but the movie's armorer, that's what they call the person who loads the gun, she's facing charges as well. But what do you make of this, Media Maven?
So there's a couple of things here. Not only Media Maven, but nationally ranked junior rifle.
I forgot, you were.
Like I remember the NRA when I was a teenager. I was nationally ranked as an expert shooter with rifles, and one of the main, this is before the NRA was a complete nut job, it was all about safety, it was about sport, it was about hunting, and one of the main lessons that we learned over and over again is you never point a weapon of any kind at anybody under any circumstances. I shot a bolt action Mossberg 22, you could have the bolt open, it was clearly, there was no round in the chamber, and if you even brought that in the direction of one of your teammates, you were suspended from the team for a couple of weeks. Just never do that. So Alec Baldwin, even though he was on a set, my understanding of what set rules are when there are weapons, even these weapons that are supposed to be, quote unquote, I'm using finger quote, prop weapons, is you just never point it at anyone. So he did that. There's no doubt about that. I think there's a question about whether he actually pulled the trigger or not.
Prosecutor said he did.
The prosecutor says he did. There are people on the set who say that's not really something that they could tell. The gun could have gone off if there's a malfunctioning happening with it. It's likely if he pulled the cock back, it could absolutely have fired in that way. But having said all that, I think that this is also a message that the prosecutor is sending about safety on sets. There's been a lot of problems with the way that the crew has been treated on sets all across the country, laws and union regulations not being filed. These workers crew members on the set actually were sleeping in their cars because of the hours that they were working, that they were concerned that they weren't working in the best safety conditions because of fatigue and other issues. So I think what this district attorney or prosecutor is doing is overcharging Alec Baldwin to make a point to people that if you are in any way on a set handling a weapon, that you need to be as careful as the people who you are hiring around you to trust. I think he's going to fight this. I don't think that he's going to plead out. I know that
one of the charges is a mandatory 5-year sentence.
Yes,
so he sure as hell is not.
Isn't it? Not involuntary.
That's one of the.
Yeah, but it could be 18 months. I think if he pled out, he could probably get 12 to 18 months based on the charge. But at the same time, I don't think he's going to do that. Someone has already taken a plea, and they're using that information to build this case against Baldwin. Look, he's not without fault here, but you work, and he is a producer on the film as well, which gives him some responsibility.
You know what is not a good thing for him, since he was a big deal, a producer, as you say, and the star of this movie, is that the New York Times reported the night before the shooting, most of the camera crew had quit over problems, as you say, with sleeping in their cars. And there was an email to other people on the set informing this was one of the big deal camera people that he was leaving. And then he talked about this camera guy that the filming of gunfight scenes was played, quote, very fast and loose, citing 2 accidental weapon discharges.
Yeah, and again, I didn't reread what they found in the round of the prop gun, but even if it's a flash, it can still hurt you. And if something was in the chamber with a flash, it doesn't have to necessarily be a round or a bullet. It could be debris that fired. There's a whole bunch of things that could happen. But again, he's going to make the argument that the producer was title only, that he wasn't actually overseeing anything or doing anything. But these are complaints that are happening in Los Angeles on a regular basis about the safety conditions on movie sets.
You were right, though, in the point, Jim, that even though he's been charged with involuntary manslaughter, this story is also reporting that he could possibly be convicted in a trial of the more serious manslaughter charge. So that could, in fact,
which is a mandatory 5.
Yep. Right. He faced a 5-year sentence.
So it could be,
and the second charge is 18 months.
Right.
Can we switch to something like a little more fun before you go?
More than drag queens in Congress?
Yeah. Did you ever eat Lobster Pot?
Oh. I'm so unhappy about this.
Well, it may not be going out of business. Lobster Pot on Commercial Street in Provincetown. The guy is selling the business for $14 million, who's owned it forever, and he wants to keep cooking if somebody buys and continues the business. But the bad news, which is I think your point, is it may not work out, and this legendary thing right in the center of town may bite the dust here.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite restaurants in the world. It really is. It is absolutely. Whenever I can go there, if we're in Provincetown or Wellfleet or Truro, we eat there at least twice. I once had dinner with a friend who didn't tell me they had dropped acid in the middle of the it was the 80s, the middle of the meal, and then started ordering everything on the right side of the menu. And then I decided we had to leave. And as we were leaving, she yelled, "Free the lobsters! Free the lobsters!"
Beautiful.
So it's a beautiful story. It's very close to my heart. But it's iconic. It's one of those things that people paint pictures of. There's such a great wait staff, and they're just wonderful people who have run it and been very caring and very strong members of the community. But at the same time, how many for the 14 million?
14 million. Yeah.
So they're asking 14 million for the land and the business. What do you think the cost of chowder is going to be in order to cover a $14 million? I mean, I think that it's clear. Listen, it's their business and they can sell it. I don't at all want to make it sound like we should all chip in and buy it to keep it. And they've been through a lot, certainly during COVID. But and there are a lot of zoning laws in Provincetown that could require it to be one thing or the other. But that's a heavy ask. I'm not sure we're going to see the Lobster Pot in the future.
So 67 New England posts on YouTube, love Sue. I mean, it's a good start.
67.
Why the low desk for guests? Why not a taller guest?
I'm tired
That's
today.
like Chris Fleming did
I
with
know.
this thing. It was
I usually
By the way, we're
understand.
getting a
lot
higher desk,
of
so stop
complaints.
complaining. We're getting a
Yes.
higher desk. Now,
It's because Jim wants a tower over all the guests.
like
I
a
just
judge
enjoy
kind
it.
of
I
thing.
feel like we're just sitting home and just chatting.
Yeah,
Jim's
okay.
at the kitchen island.
I had something else to say, but I totally forgot what it was. So goodbye.
Goodbye. Call me. Call me over the
Okay.
weekend.
It was something else.
Text me and
I'm
be
not calling
vulnerable.
you. I'm not calling you or
Jim,
texting. No,
text
I'm not.
me and be vulnerable.
That's why I don't text people, because they may ask me questions. I don't want to answer
I don't
anybody's
either.
questions. Do you really?
I'm the same
mind
way.
your
I
own
don't
business.
Listen,
you know?
I had to have a somewhat emotional conversation today, and I'm exhausted
That's
from
horrible.
it. It's terrible.
The nerve.
Imagine.
talking
By the
about
way,
the-
it was her daughter that she was talking to.
Are you talking about the Happiness Project? How we're
Yeah.
supposed
Yes.
to have more
It's
emotional
not the
discussions?
Happiness
It's
Project,
not.
Marjorie. It's
no,
not called the
but
Happiness
it's about
Project.
how to get happier in your
It
life.
is.
I'm
right?
happy
Exactly.
enough.
Yeah.
I'm happy
Fine.
enough. You're happy enough?
Something else I'll call you.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Sue O'Connell, our
Sue
media
O'Connell,
maven.
right.
Thank you. Come on.
Co-publisher of
Sue
Bay
O'Connell.
Windows and South
Applauding
End
for
News.
herself.
And
By the way,
a
about a
contributor-
third of the people aren't even applauding. When you started, could the people in the back in the corner, here she is, Sue O'Connell.
There we go.
There we go.
Very sad,
Little
Sue.
enthusiasm.
Maybe it's because the desk is
Yeah,
so
I'll stand
low.
up.
I think that's it.
Whoa, thank you.
There you go.
Goodbye. See you around.
Sue is the
Take care.
co-publisher of
Enough
Bay
of
Windows
this.
and South End News and contributor to Current on NBC, LX, and NECN. Thank you very much, media
Sue
maven.
O'Connell, there she is.
Sue O'Connell.
There she is,
Okay.
Sue O'Connell.
After a quick break, you're in for a big treat. It is Live Music Friday, and we're going to be treated to
They are
some
great.
bite-sized opera, courtesy of the Boston Opera Collaborative. That's next on 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio.
Lunar New Year is on Sunday. For those around the world who observe, it's a time to gather with friends and family.
Always during this week of the holiday, they come back to home and they make a lot of good food to celebrate the special occasion.
What some families are cooking up this year, and tips for making your own meal on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Mass General Cancer Center, dedicated to providing compassionate care, and cancer specialists who are experienced in the cancer you have. When you hear the word cancer, their team is ready. Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer. And the Cambridge Homes, a nonprofit, independent, and assisted living residence with a tradition of service, working with Cambridge area seniors for more than 130 years. Learn more at thecambridgehomes.org/tradition.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. It's that time Marjorie and I look forward to every week. We hope you do too. Live Music Friday, right here at the Boston Public Library. Western opera, as we know it, was developed sometime in the 17th century, I'm told, in Italy. And in the 300 years since its conception, well, frankly, not a lot has changed. In some senses, I guess that's a good thing. There's plenty to love and appreciate about the tradition and the form of a classic opera. At the same time, there's something undeniable about the idea of bringing fresh perspectives to an old medium. Cue the Boston Opera Collaborative. This weekend, they're hosting their 5th Opera Bits series, 7 fresh, original, you ready? 10-minute takes on the operatic form. And yes, there's food and drinks to enjoy while you watch. If you want to catch them in person, that's going to be tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday at the Edward M. Pickman Concert Hall at Longy School of Music in Cambridge. Tickets are available at bocopera.org. We're joined now by Patricia Maria Weinman and Greg Smucker, co-artistic directors of the Boston Opera Collaborative. It's the longest introduction in American history. Segment's over. In a few minutes, we'll hear selections from their aforementioned Opera Bites as part of our week. I'm not saying anymore. Welcome to both of you. It's great to see you. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it.
So let's start with you, Patricia Maria. There's a mission here to do what you guys do. Tell us what it's about.
It is, and before I start, I'd like to push back a little bit on your statement that opera hasn't changed in the last 400 years.
It has?
It has changed dramatically.
It has. That's what I meant. I meant that, by the way.
I knew you did, but I thought we would
wanted to see if you were
clarify
listening.
that.
Yeah.
I'm listening to.
How
I'm
did it
hanging
change?
on every
How did it
word.
change?
It's changed as far as the music, how it's developed. It's become more complex as time goes by.
Type of stories.
In truth, opera has always been about music, the voice, the complexity of the music, and that's developed over time. However, in the 20th century, we definitely took a turn as far as focusing more on text, storytelling, and we're bringing it to the next level.
So let me give you a little media advice, even though you didn't ask. Correcting the host is a very bad idea. Let me explain that. Okay, so back to the mission.
I have to defend opera.
The mission is conversion, is it not? It's for those who are not fans to have an entry point, at least that seems that way to me, an entry point that may not be quite as intimidating.
Absolutely. These opera bites are 10-minute sized operas, and it's a way for people who may not be familiar with opera to come and enjoy an experience. It's sort of the opposite of traditional opera. Opera is usually like 3 or 4 hours long in a foreign language about themes or subjects that are really sort of archaic and sometimes.
And this is in
ridiculous.
English.
These are all in English. They're 10 minutes long. They're contemporary stories, and it's a really great way to sort of encounter the operatic medium for the first time. Or if you're an opera lover, you'll love these as well.
Give us a sense of some of the contemporary themes that you guys addressed. Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
You start.
Well, you'll hear a couple of pieces. We'll introduce those later. There's a piece about, there's some sort of an absurd piece about Hamlet, who opens an investigation business before he goes on and finishes the play. He sort of takes a side detour into private detective business. There's a piece about a civil rights activist who's torn between the needs of his cause and the needs of his family. There's a piece about a woman who's trying to decide on a second date what to order so as not to offend her
Not
date.
to offend, to set herself up.
Yeah.
There's a great one with 3 mothers in a mother's yoga class, and they're not very good students.
And a really poignant piece about a man who's trying to reconnect with his wife before he loses her to dementia.
Patricia Maria, why don't you? I'm sorry, go
I was just going to say, these are world premieres in a sense.
They
These
are.
Yes, they
these
are.
are first time, and even though they're only 7 minutes, it's going to take
10 minutes.
10 minutes,
10 to
excuse me.
12.
It's going to take a tremendous amount of work to put even a short piece
It does,
together.
yeah. They're complex pieces. We've been working on them since December, and we saw our actors' faces for the first time on Wednesday because we've been rehearsing in masks.
So, Patricia Maria, first of all, you should be aware opera's changed a lot in the last 400 years. You may not, I don't know if you know that. You probably do since
Jim
you
is
do what
going
you
to
do.
repeat this about 10 times during the interview.
Tell us what the theme of the piece, a piece of which we're going to hear in a minute, and tell us who the performers are, if you will, because I'm dying to hear the music.
Greg actually directed this one.
So do it.
Yep.
What is it?
This piece is called Crush, and it's an opera about 2 men who meet on the street. They fall instantly in love. There's a whirlwind romance. They settle in, and then they realize that they have very different expectations about what it means to love someone and what they expect and how they expect to be shown love in a relationship. This piece is performed by Chris Remkus and Mitch Fitzdaniel, and Yukiko Oba is on piano for this.
And written by Joshua Brown and Tony Salitro.
Yep.
Gentlemen, take it away.
I thought you'd never ask. My first love was Mr. Clean. My first car was forest green. My first word was all about your life. My first kiss all about your plans. Oh, dream. I eat my body weight in protein and always wear sunscreen. That light in your eye. My life coach is a drag queen with bad oral hygiene. Keep talking. I'm a many shapes? How many shapes? How many numbers can 20 fingers count? How many colors can 4 eyes see? How much blood can 2 hearts pump? 2 hearts now hold. 4 feet a journey. 2 hearts, 1 mile. 4 hands to share the burden. I'll build a nest for you, get nicely dressed for you. I will be my best for you. Come plant deep roots with me, munch on sweet fruits with me, grow old and cute with me. Let's get to digging and weeding together in our backyard Eden. I'll dust the soil off the thyme and mint. You'll suck the dirt from my fingertips.
That's ridiculous. All that dirt, I can't.
That was great.
Okay. Do we have to go to the laundry school to find out if they make it?
You do.
We do. Yeah, maybe they need to bring in the operatic marriage counselor or something to figure it out. I don't know. That was spectacular.
Can I repeat myself? This is brilliant, I have to say. For those people, I've told the story only about 10,000 times. I've been to one classical performance my whole life before I moved here, and we had Andres Nelson's on, and we hadn't met at the time, and I figured I had to go to the BSO to hear it. And all of a sudden, once I saw the players, as opposed to just hearing the music, I became a total convert. And the brilliance of the BSO to go to Franklin Park and all these, to reach out so that people have that experience. That's the same deal here. Bless you, Marjorie. It is so totally accessible, which I know is the goal, obviously. Yes?
It is the goal.
Yeah. And does it work? I mean, you've been doing this for a bunch of years. Is there any evidence that people, when they see this, decide, I'm going to give what I was intimidated by a chance? Do you know what I mean?
I would say we don't have quantitative
Well, I didn't mean,
analysis,
but what's
but
your-
yes, people say, this is fantastic. I had no idea it could be so much fun.
And part of it is being in the space with singers. I mean, I hated opera for a long time. I came to opera late. I was a stage director, trained in theater, and I just found opera boring. And it wasn't until I was in graduate school and I was forced to take a class on directing singers, and was in the same room with the singers, and just felt like what the power of their vocal expression and what they could do as storytellers was amazing, and I was hooked. And so what we're trying to do here is to bring people into smaller spaces. We always perform in intimate spaces, like 100, 200 seats, usually, or even like in found spaces outside in gardens, or we've performed at some Forest Hill Cemetery as well, where you're really close to the singer. So it's not just about, a huge spectacle, but it's connecting with the singer. You can see faces, and it's a really amazing experience.
Well, you're so close, your body vibrates from their sound. That's what's so fantastic.
So when people go to the Lange music school, they'll hear a bunch of these different little vignettes, or opera bites, as you call them. Yeah. Somebody had a great expression for what this is. Was it you?
Are we allowed to say it?
Yes.
It's the gateway drug for opera.
Of course you can say it. It's great.
I love it. The gateway drug for opera. I mean, because I think it is intimidating to lots of people, especially they think you have to get so dressed up to go see.
Exactly. You can come, you can wear whatever. We're at cafe tables. There's food and adult beverages, snacks and adult beverages.
Yeah.
And,
so Greg Smucker, you have something in April too. I mean, we want people to go to the deal this weekend. But what's coming up in April?
We do. In April, we're performing an older piece. It's a piece from the opera canon. We people love these older pieces, and so we try to do one a year. We try to do a fresh take on it, and this is a modern dress production of a piece called The Elixir of Love in English. It's at the substation in Roslindale, which is this beautiful old, big indoor sort of high-ceiling warehousey space. And it'd be 100 seats. They have beer hall pop-ups on the weekends, and so we're performing in that. And it's set in a bar, and it's a man is in love with his boss essentially, and doesn't know how to approach her, and so he acquires this, what he thinks is the elixir of love. It's actually just a bottle of wine. Gives him the confidence and bravado to eventually sort of to pursue her, and she realizes that she has feelings for him. So
and in November, the opera is the sexual harassment trial from flowing out of that. It's a beautiful thing. So Patricia Maria, can you describe what the next thing is? You got to throw it to him too. What's
Yes,
the deal here?
I
What
will.
is it, and who are these people?
This is Isabel Randall and Nina Anderson. Again, Yukiko is
Hi, you two.
performing.
Hi, you three.
On the piano. This is Courthouse Bells, and it is a powerful and really beautiful piece centering around African American voting rights. And it's told from the perspective of the grandmother, Mabel, and who represents her past experiences, but she's moving into the future, and her granddaughter, Stephanie, who's a civil rights attorney.
Written by Mary D. Watkins and Anita Gonzalez.
Anita Gonzalez.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We can't wait.
Count. The courthouse where they made us count jelly beans for that white man just to register to vote. One bad, two bad, who knows how many they kept in that goddamn jar.
That was before. It won't be like that this time.
What makes you so sure?
I'm sure because it's a new day and you don't have time. I've been hustling, going door to door, signing petitions, collected signatures. It's about the future. It's about our future. It's about my future.
Future. What is my future?
Being old. We're getting older.
Joe is gone. Life passes by, then it's over.
We have to do this now before you go.
There's no going back.
We have to do this now before you go. We are not going back.
It'll have to be now.
Now is the time.
Great.
That was
Thank you.
Isabel Randall and
Wow.
Nina Anderson singing Courthouse Bells by Mary D. Watkins and Anita Gonzalez, and the pianist was Oba Yukiko
Oba.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You were great. All the performers were great. Let's hear it for them again. And the program and the concept is brilliant. We're glad to meet everybody, and lots of luck this weekend.
Thanks so
We really
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you very, very, very much. We've been listening to performers from Boston Opera Collaborative. Their series, Opera Bites, original 10-minute operas, is this weekend, tonight, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon at the Laundry School of Music in Cambridge. Tickets are available at BOC, like capital BOC, BOCopera.org. BOCO, that's included in opera. What's the best way to say this?
BOCopera.org.
Thank you. BOCopera.org. Thank you
It's
so much.
always good to ask. That's my attitude.
Thank you very
Yes,
much
it
for
is.
being here.
You're great.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, coming up, we talked about this yesterday and got an outpouring of opinions, let's put it that way, on driving in the slow lane when you're not passing on the highway. So coming up, we're going to open the lines at 877-301-8970, and we're going to ask your thoughts on slow drivers. How do you get around them? How do you keep your cool? Maybe you're one of
Republicans in North Carolina are just one vote shy of a veto-proof supermajority, and they're planning to use that power to further curtail abortion rights in the state. We're asking if North Carolina Democrats can hold the line on reproductive rights. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the Handel and Haydn Society. Conductor Václav Lux leads Beethoven's heroic symphony Eroica, performed and shared by the H&H Orchestra this weekend at Symphony Hall. Tickets and more at handelandhaydn.org. And the members of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, working together to make sure all of our public schools and colleges have what they need to help every student succeed. The MTA, fighting for public education and our communities. massteacher.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We talked about this yesterday with Andrea Cabral. Marjorie's obsessed. The text lines were flooded with opinions. South Carolina is considering raising the fines for people who hold up traffic in the left hand or the passing lane, $100. Here in Massachusetts, that's also where the fine stands, which I did not know till the morning.
Neither did I.
Our question is $100 draconian enough? It is not for Marjorie. The number to call or text is 877-301-8970. What are your thoughts on slow drivers? How you get around them? How you keep your cool? Maybe you're a slow driver yourself. Marjorie thinks I am. Safety first. Always having to put it, well, whatever with Marjorie. In any case, 877-301-8970. Before you explain, everybody knows your position. Why is this so important to you? It is incredibly important to you.
Well, because it holds up all the traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And
How often do you encounter this? Like once a month?
Constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly. And you're not supposed to pass people on the right hand, but that's what people end up doing. They ended up passing people on the right because there's no one, they're not passing anybody. They're just driving along in the passing lane, going like maybe 55, maybe 60, 65 miles an hour, and they're holding up all the traffic behind them, and you can't get by them. That's the problem. It's kind of like, if you're walking down the street and you're blocking someone's ability to go by you and you're walking at a very slow pace. That's why. And you see this more and more and more, which you see more and more of people passing people in the right-hand lane, which you're not supposed to do either. And I don't hear about people I never see anybody getting pulled over for this. I guess they do. We had a couple of state troopers who texted us yesterday, said that they do pull people over for this. But mostly you see people getting pulled over who just passed you going like 90 in a fancy sports car.
Well, instead of worrying about a ticket, I think James in Cambridge, and I am sort of James in Cambridge too, but this is a different one, I think has the perfect solution, which I'm sure people like you believe in.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes when I'm stuck behind a slow poke in the passing lane, I pass them, move in front of them, and then start going even slower than they are to give them a taste of their own medicine. That is a cure. Would you not agree?
Well, yeah, there's a sort of, I think there's a lot of hostility towards
There is
these
a lot
people.
of hostility.
But it's just kind of rude. It's just
Yeah.
not, you're not paying attention. You're not realizing that you're holding up everybody on the road. And when you go by them and you look at them and try to check out who they are and why they would be doing this, they are kind of oblivious. They don't seem to realize that they are holding up all the
You know what
traffic.
horrible thing they're doing? Let me put it another way. They're going the speed limit, we call it. That's what most of them are doing. They're going the speed
Let
limit.
them go the speed limit in
Okay.
the lane that's not for passing people. There's one reason to be in the passing lane.
To pass.
And it is to pass.
877-301-8097. I want to tell a quick story I've told before, but since Marjorie said you look in the other car, see what it is. I don't know, 15 years ago or so, I'm on the Mass Pike driving to Cambridge, and everybody's going like 80 miles an hour except for me.
That's
I'm
right.
driving the speed limit.
That's right.
And somebody else is driving the speed limit. And I decide to speed up a little bit in violation, to go a little bit faster, to catch up with the other law-abiding person, because I'm saying there are literally hundreds of cars going 75, whatever, and two people are obeying the law. I look into the car next to me. Who's in the car?
Oh, that's right. It was
Who
Mike
is it?
Dukakis.
Governor Dukakis. Me and I and Governor Dukakis obeying the law. 877-301-8097. It's pathetic, the reaction we're already getting. Marjorie
It's a big
apparently
deal.
is not
You know what else?
alone.
You know what else? It drives people nuts. It gets their blood pressure up. They just are driven nuts by it. I think it probably causes accidents because people tailgate the person that's going really
You
slow.
are a tailgate. You know you're a tailgate.
I'm not
You
a
are a
tailgater.
tailgater.
That was in my youth. I've
I didn't
straightened
know
out.
you in your youth, Marjorie.
Okay, well, I was pretty young when you knew me, Jim. and
Well,
I've-
whatever.
I've
I
straightened
still know
things
you,
out.
actually. I don't know if you're aware.
You do. That's a good point.
When I knew you.
You still know me.
I
That is
still
good.
know you. I
Yes.
don't really know you, if that's your point.
That's right.
But I
because-
do know
well,
you. Is that
I
what
don't know
you mean?
you. You know why?
Oh, yeah.
Because you're not authentic.
That's
Jim.
exactly. I
As
wonder where I heard that.
Yes, that was
where
the
was
author
that?
of
Well,
The Good Life, Dr. Robert Waldinger.
No, it was actually not Dr. Robert Waldinger. It was our former
was
lead
our
producer.
former lead
Patrick
producer.
in a car, you're first on Boston Public Radio with Marjorie's Obsession. Welcome, Patrick. How are you?
Hey there. I absolutely love you guys.
Thanks.
You're the best.
We are?
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I have several things to say about
Please.
driving in Massachusetts. I have a cure to the national debt problem, first of all.
Oh.
Every time someone switches a lane without using their blinker, they should pay $5. That will do it. will be
That one I agree
debt-free
with,
in a
by the way.
year.
I agree with that completely.
Yeah. The second thing I have to say is I think if every American would go and drive in Europe for a week, that would pretty much solve all of our
And why
issues
is that?
on the highways. Because, they drive intelligently over there. They actually go into the passing lane and pass, and then they move back over. I don't know what it is.
Well, it's
I
the
mean,
ugly Americans, apparently, don't you think?
Well, I don't know. Maybe we're not trained well enough, or maybe there's not enough enforcement, but it's a real problem.
Marjorie would like to invite you out for a drink, Patrick, so stay on hold.
Thank you very
for an
much for the
excellent
call.
We appreciate it.
Listen to this one. Back in the 1950s, my grandfather, who was a notoriously slow driver, was driving on the
good.
Pennsylvania Turnpike, got stopped by a policeman, given a
is really
ticket
good.
for driving too slowly. Later that same day, he was stopped again many miles down the road by the same policeman for driving too slowly. I guess he didn't learn from
Jane from Newton.
From the first time around. Yeah, that is from Jane from Newton. It is a real problem. 877-301-8970 is the number you can call us or text us. How do you deal with this issue on the highway? It is very frustrating for a lot of us. Let's go to John and Gardner. Hi,
Hey, John, how are you?
Hi, kids. I'm well. How you all doing?
Fine,
I think we're
thank
good.
you.
Good. Marjorie Egan, the woman of mystery. We all knew it.
That's right. That's
now,
right.
Marjorie, I'm gonna chasten you now, Marjorie.
Okay.
Oh, good.
My mother did not learn to drive until she was approaching 40, I think. I was
Wow.
a little kid, so right. And my experience has been people that learn to drive in their adult years are kind of nervous about it, never
Yes,
get over it.
that
She
is
never did.
a good point.
I was probably around 11 or 12. We're heading up to Framingham for something on Route 9. I grew up in Natick. And she's in the left lane. And I noticed people passing on the right, a couple of honking cars. So I noticed, I said, Ma, I think people want you to move over. She said, I got to take a left up here. And I'm there, we're going 5 miles up the road. I didn't say that, actually, but we were going 5 miles up the road. But she wanted to be in the lane to get ready to take that
I love
turn,
that.
and that's all she was focused on. So, Marjorie, you could be yelling and getting angry at a woman raising 9 kids by herself.
That's
you know what I mean?
true. That's true.
Remember that next time.
Yeah,
But,
not very nice of me, but I think you're right, John, and great to hear from you. That,
Good to hear from
that
you,
if you
John.
learn to drive when you're in your 40s, I think you are more hesitant as opposed to learning to drive when you're 16 years old. You know.
By the way, Phil from Shrewsbury apparently texts or posted on YouTube or something. I agree with this. Even more dangerous is the driver in the right lane flying by everybody.
Well,
now you would argue
Phil,
they're
the question
forced to do that.
Why are they in the right lane
Yeah.
flying by everybody? Because some slowpoke, some tortoise is driving in the passing lane at 55 miles
Do you
an
know
hour.
your level of vitriol around this topic
That's right.
is really extreme?
You know,
do you
Jim,
know that?
You get upset about a lot of things. I don't get it. This is the thing that really drives me crazy.
Apparently it
Yeah, I'm
does.
driving to New York City next week. I don't want anybody in
are?
the passing lane that shouldn't be in the passing lane.
What do you do, by the way, what you haven't disclosed, because you're very closed-mouthed about your driving behaviors, what do you do when you are behind somebody in the passing lane who is not passing? What do you do then?
I just try to figure out what their deal is.
Psychoanalyze
No,
them? What
I
do you
just
mean?
wonder. Are they not paying attention? Do they not care that they're holding
No,
up
but what
traffic?
do you do to remedy the situation? I guess
Nothing. I just have to wait till I
it's
can get
very
by them.
sad.
What are you going
It's
to do?
really
I'm not
sad.
going to. You know what a lot of people do? They flash their lights.
Yeah,
but this
you've never
really,
done that.
No, I haven't. But lots of people do that, and I think sometimes that backfires because
Yeah.
the person in front gets
Gets
really
angry.
ticked off about that,
Yeah.
so they go even slower. But I think they're dangerous. I mean, I think they really get people worked into a frenzy. Tim from Worcester, what do you think, Tim?
What's up, Tim?
Hi.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting me on.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that this morning I was on the Mass Pike going east, and I was doing about 80 miles an hour, but someone behind me wanted to do 90 miles an hour.
Incredible.
And when I looked to the right, there was no one on the side of me.
Wow.
So I don't understand why they didn't go around me. And Marjorie, that's what I would recommend you to do. If there's enough room to go to the right,
Excellent
just go
point.
around them.
How about that, Marjorie?
And then don't slow down because
No.
you're going to, that's actually called road rage. I don't road rage anybody. When I see someone in front of me and they're slower, I just go to the right.
Well, we're not supposed to pass people on the right, Tim. Didn't you read your driver's manual? You're supposed to pass on the
How
left.
about that, Tim?
Not on the
I
right.
don't go by that at all.
Oh, you
Not
don't
at all.
go
No,
by
he
that
also
at all.
drives 80 miles an hour. No wonder.
Okay.
Hey, Tim, thanks for the call.
Yeah,
We
that's-
appreciate
well,
it.
yeah, I was breaking the line.
Yeah, we knew that. You didn't have to tell us. Thank you very much. 877-301-8097. Marjorie's actually reading the
rules of the
state
road.
legislation
Yep, state
around.
rules of the
What
road.
have you learned in the last couple of minutes?
Well, I learned that if you are on an expressway with 3 or more lanes in your direction, use the far right lane for slower driving, the middle lane for faster driving, and the far left lane for passing.
Well, you really added a
Only
lot to this
passing.
conversation
I
with
think
that,
so.
let me tell you.
I think so. And the blinker thing is a big issue, too. You should put your blinker on. I have a thing in my car which really drives me crazy now that if you don't use your blinker, after like 5 times, it tells you a little coffee cup comes
You don't
up.
think that's fabulous? That you should stop because you're tired, they
You should
think.
stop because you're tired. Yeah.
Well, you know why they're doing that? Because you're not using your blinker
That's
properly.
right. They're telling you not using your blinker properly. And of
So
course,
does that concern you
I
at all?
always use my blinker
I don't
properly,
think so.
Jim. Susie from Bellingham. What do you think, Susie?
Marjorie's really hostile today. Have you noticed?
Hi.
Hey, Susie, what's up?
Hi, Marjorie. Hi, Jim.
Hi there. What's up?
Oh, I agree with Marjorie with a lot of things about the blinker, especially. That
Yeah.
drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Marjorie, I put my blinker on before I pass, like before I
There you
get to
go.
the car that I'm going to pass, so everyone knows that I'm going to pass when I clear this car. And I was telling the girl that answered the phone, I got stopped actually one night coming home on 495, and I had passed a car, and I had passed the cop. He was on the side of the road, and all of a sudden I see the lights behind me, and I just put my blinker on to get in the middle lane after passing this car, and the cops behind me, failure to keep right. Like he gave me a ticket for not getting back over quick enough, I guess.
Wow.
I mean, that was crazy. But what you just said about the lane, slow travel, and passing, that's posted in Connecticut.
It
And I
is.
can't tell you how many times I see Connecticut plates that don't drive properly like that. But you're right, Jim. I think people are not taught properly or it's not enforced enough.
I didn't say that,
It's
but
not
that's okay
ingrained
anyway.
in their heads
Yeah.
when they learn how to drive.
Okay.
It's crazy out there.
It is crazy. Susie,
Anyway,
brilliant. And
that
I
was
agree with
about
you
it.
now. No, you said it beautifully. I couldn't
Thank you,
agree
Susie,
more.
for
By the
the
way,
call.
here is somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. This is
Yep.
Jim from Worcester.
Yep.
He says, I see slow drivers as a teachable moment. They are how I taught my kid pretty much every curse word I know, which I think is probably accurate. 877-301-8970.
Here's Britt from Worcester. Of all the problems with Massachusetts drivers, not driving fast enough is not one of them.
Amen.
I've never lived
Amen.
somewhere where so many drivers operate their vehicles with such aggression. If the left lane is for folks who want to go 95 miles per hour and the 65 mile per hour speed limit, count me out, I guess.
Can I tell you something, by the way? I mean, ordinarily, I want you to judge our discussion on the merits of my argument and versus Marjorie's argument. You also have to put this in context. I have known Marjorie for, 20-some years.
Mm-hmm.
All of those 25 years, I have had a rear bumper on my car. How many years did you go with your Sienna with no rear bumper? How long did you say?
It was a while.
It was a while.
I was in an accident.
I'm not done yet.
Someone rear-ended me, Jim.
Okay, I didn't. Okay, fine. And how long was your car in the shop after you backed into a wall and your rear mirror shattered? How long was that?
It was a bike rack.
It was
I
a bike
forgot
rack.
that I had a bike rack.
You forgot you had a bike
on the
rack.
back
Okay.
into the wall.
So when you're judging
Yeah.
the merits of the arguments, put it in context. Who's making the argument?
Well,
and
I
who's not.
think, some people like to repair the dents in their car. I've never been one of them.
Why would you do
I
that?
have a dent over there.
Could you just get another one?
You know what happened?
The flower pot fell off the
pot
roof
fell
of the
off
Lennox.
roof of the Lennox
We should be
Hotel.
nice. By the way, the Lennox could not be better
They
to
were
us
great.
in every way.
They took
case, they
complete
paid for
responsibility.
everything.
Well, they haven't paid for everything because I haven't gone to get it fixed
Okay,
yet.
well,
It's
they
still
would
there.
if you did. It was only 5 years ago, so
was
I don't
5
think there's
years
any
ago. Well, it
reason to
wasn't
rush to
5
get
years
the
ago.
repair. It was like 4 years ago, Marjorie.
Ron from Seabrook.
Have you
thank
really not gotten that fixed?
I have not.
And what is the reason? I'm just curious.
It's very time-consuming.
It's time-consuming.
Ron from Seabrook, thank you for calling.
It's only been 4 years, Ron. Go ahead, Ron.
Hi,
What's up?
Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, you too. Hi.
I enjoy your program.
Thank you.
It seems as though no matter how fast you want to go, somebody in that left lane wants to go faster.
Marjorie, yeah.
That's right. So
We've
move
already
over.
heard
Move
that
over, Ron.
The book says don't pass on the right, but everyone does. But as a little sidebar, I'm on the road basically for a living.
Oh.
And if you took a little poll and asked who is likely to be in the car or what kind of car it's likely to be.
Oh, don't do this. Be careful here, Ron. Go ahead.
Oh, if it's an aggressive jerk, it's almost always a BMW.
Oh, I thought you were going somewhere else. That is perfectly
Really?
fine.
Now, how have you determined
Oh.
this after years of study, who's passing you and being a jerk?
Take a poll. If there's somebody that's treating all the cars as if
BMW.
they're ski slalom gates, I think they make you sign something when you buy the car.
There you go.
That says you're going to drive like a jerk.
That was brilliant. Actually, that was fabulous, Ron. Thank you very much for the poll. Do you agree with the BMW analysis that Ron was making?
I have not noticed
You haven't?
BMWs,
too
no.
bad.
But I do know, don't you think you're more likely to get pulled over by the police if you're in a snazzy car?
Of course you are.
Yeah, I think it's not that exciting
I'm
to
not
pull
sure.
over.
I don't know why I said of
pull
course
over
you
a
are.
car and a mother in a minivan. You know what I mean? I just don't think. I think you can get away with driving faster.
Well,
when
how
you're
about a mother in a
driving
minivan with no rear window and no bumper?
I
That's a possibility,
I did fix
too.
the rear window, Jim. Listen to this. Guys, as a late bloomer, licensed at 23, I always thought the lane on the left is the lane that fast drivers get into and stay there. There's always people in that lane, and they almost never move over. But this person said, after listening to us, they're now going to change their ways,
beautiful.
Jim. I think a lot of people think that. They think it's fine to just keep driving in the passing lane and never moving over because it's easier than having to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I pass somebody, Jim, I move over.
You do?
Yes, I do.
That's great.
Chris in the car. Thank you
Chris,
for calling.
what's up?
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. I'll make this quick. When it comes to etiquette, one thing that drives me nuts is when we're stuck in traffic, heavy traffic, and I let somebody in, as just being courteous, and I don't get a wave of gratitude.
Let me
When it
tell you,
comes
I
to
am
me-
so glad you called. Take it away, Chris. Keep talking. Go ahead.
When people let me in, I have almost gotten myself into fender benders because I give a wave of gratitude. Thank you very much.
Can I tell you, can we
That's
talk
a
about
great
that for a
point.
minute? When you are allowed in, what is it called, cutting the line, and you do not have the decency to wave or tip your hat or give a salute to the person who let you in, there's something wrong with it. Would you agree with Chris?
Yes, I think that's very good. But I think Jamie, our soon-to-be ex-producer, summed it up when he said, "Anyone going slower than me is a moron. Anyone going faster than me is a maniac."
Mature.
That's right. Really you're driving a pretty fancy car over there. That little Mustang.
Another EV gun kind of.
Yeah,
going.
I like that one.
877-301-8970. By the way, I was going to say the full lines are full, but we only have 2 minutes left. I would like to know, has anybody ever gotten a ticket for this? Why don't you do the research to find out, has anybody ever gotten a ticket for the $100 ticket for driving slow? Marjorie's reading a text. Go ahead, you're amused.
My friend's 85-year-old mother had the lane change warning beep turned off. She doesn't want to give her game plan away. This is Susan Framingham. Yeah. Jay in Warwick, thank you for calling.
Hey, Jay.
Hey, thank you very much for taking my call.
Thank you.
Marjorie, just commenting on when you said coming up behind someone and flashing their light.
Yeah.
When I was taught to drive, and I was taught to do that, and if I'm in the left lane and someone comes up and flashes their lights, I move right over. If they're just coming up and doing nothing, I stay right in the lane.
Well, Jay, you're supposed to only be in the lane when you're passing, Jay.
No, but he's saying if he's there and someone respectfully does a light blink kind of thing, he respectfully moves over to the next lane.
Well, he shouldn't have to do a light blink thing.
Well, occasionally it happens, Marjorie. Occasionally you make a mistake in life.
What, Jay? And through much of Rhode Island, Marjorie, a lot of 95 is just 2 lanes.
That's right.
So it is 2 travel lanes.
How about that, Marjorie?
Well, it's not 2 travel lanes,
she's
Jay.
getting angry.
It's the passing
Here she
lane
goes.
is on the left, and you're only supposed to be in it when
I've
you're
never
passing.
seen you like this.
I want people to know this, because I think a lot of people don't know this, that this is going to help me with my trip to New York next week.
Okay, fine.
That you're not supposed to be in the passing lane unless you're passing.
What do you think? People on the road with you that day are listening?
I'm trying to send out a warning just in case anybody's driving.
Can I tell you something? Jay, you still there?
You are right, Marjorie.
Jesus.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank
well,
you.
go away now, Jay. That's enough. Thank you for your call. We appreciate it. Kind of say, what?
Listen to Steve from Gloucester.
What did he say?
He says, slow left lane driving and teachers' unions, both horror shows.
I was just going to say, Ron DeSantis and left lane driving are your 2 great whatevers.
That's Stephen Gloucester. That was pretty good.
Thank you, Steve.
Pretty
Okay,
good.
we're done.
Okay, we are done.
We're done.
But thank you very much for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. Tune in Monday for Michael Curry from the Mass League of Community Health Centers and the NAACP. Also, Boston Globe editor Brian McGraw.
This is last week. His last day is next Friday.
Editor of the Boston Globe. He's a really talented columnist.
He's going to be head of the journalism department at BU, by the way, and write a column weekly for the Globe.
Yeah, which will be really fun because he's a great columnist. Mayor Wu's new senior advisor for public safety, Isaac Yablo, the Reverends Irene Monroe and Emmett G. Price III, and former roommate of Congressman George Santos, Gregory Maury Parker, is going to be with us to give us the lowdown on the Congressman of a Million Lives. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Brendan Deedy. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Brian Bell is on the boards for us today. Our executive producer, at least for the moment, is Jamie Bologna. We want to thank our on-site staff at BPL, Sai Patel, Evelyn Brito, Colin Cockrell, and Angelica Marrero. All I have to say before we go is left lane is for passing. When you're done passing, move to the right lane.
Okay, I have one more thing. If you're contemplating going to New York next weekend and you see a blue Toyota with no rear bumper and no rear window, move over. Move the hell over.
It's not. I have a damaged hood, but I do have a rear
I meant
bumper.
with a damaged hood.
A damaged hood,
Because it's only been 4 years. Let's not rush to fix it. Thank you all for coming. By the way, we appreciate that very much.
Thank you very much for coming.
Marjorie, your arguments were very powerful in the last segment.
Were they powerful?
They were. They were good.
Some people have very important crusades. I have a crusade, Jim.
Very small crusade.
And it's stay out of the left lane unless you're passing.
And
that's mine, and I'm sticking to it.
You're leading it beautifully. I'm Jim Browdy.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you have a great weekend. Hope you can tune in again on Monday. Bye-bye.